The moment Caleb Dawson saw the schoolteacher holding his sleeping son on Christmas morning, he knew his carefully guarded world was about to shatter. For 7 years, he'd convinced himself that loving again would be a betrayal. But when his daughter screamed the truth he'd been running from, that he was turning their home into a tomb, everything he thought he knew about grief, loyalty, and second chances came crashing down in the snow outside his frozen ranch. If you want to see how a man chooses between honoring the dead and saving the living, stay with me until the very end. And hey, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wind came down from the mountains like a living thing that December, scraping against the wooden buildings of Silver Creek with claws made of ice. Most folks had learned to ignore it, just another hardship in a town where hardship was currency. But Evelyn Mercer had never quite managed that particular trick. Even after 7 winters in this place, the sound still made her feel like the only person awake in a sleeping world. She stood in the doorway of the schoolhouse, watching the last of her students disappear into the gray afternoon. Little Sarah Patterson turned back once, mittened hand raised in a wave, before her mother pulled her along toward the general store. Evelyn waved back, holding her smile until they rounded the corner. Then she let it drop. The schoolhouse behind her glowed with decorations she'd spent 3 evenings putting up. Paper snowflakes hung from the rafters, each one cut by hand because store-bought seemed wasteful when you were living on a teacher's salary. Cranberry garlands draped the windows. A small pine tree stood in the corner, decorated with whatever the children had brought from home. Pine cones painted white, strips of fabric tied into bows, a tarnished star that had belonged to the Hendersons before their house burned down 2 springs ago. It looked warm, inviting, like a place where a family might gather. Evelyn had no family to gather. She pulled her shawl tighter and stepped back inside, closing the door against the wind. The silence hit her immediately, that particular quality of quiet that comes when children's voices have just stopped echoing. She'd grown familiar with it over the years, intimate even, the kind of companion you don't want but can't seem to shake. "Stop it," she muttered to herself, moving to the stove to bank the fire. "You're being maudlin." But Christmas had a way of exposing the architecture of loneliness. All year long, you could fill your days with work and convince yourself that purpose was enough. Then December arrived, and suddenly everyone had somewhere to be, someone waiting for them. Everyone except you. She was reaching for the poker when she heard boots on the steps outside. The door opened before she could call out, letting in a blast of cold air and Caleb Dawson. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't quite sure he belonged there, a tall man made taller by the heavy coat and wide-brimmed hat he wore against the weather. Snow dusted his shoulders. His face, weathered by years of ranch work and something heavier than weather, held an expression Evelyn had seen before but never quite been able to name. "Mr. Dawson?" She straightened, surprised. "Did Emma forget something?" "No." He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. "I came to talk to you." Evelyn waited. Caleb Dawson wasn't a man who wasted words, but he also wasn't one who sought out conversation. In the 2 years since his daughter Emma had started school, Evelyn could count on one hand the number of times they'd spoken beyond basic pleasantries. He came to the Christmas program, sat in the back, left before anyone could corner him into small talk. "Would you like to sit?" she offered, gesturing to one of the student benches. "Rather stand if it's all the same." He cleared his throat. "This won't take long." Something in his tone made her nervous. Had Emma done something wrong? The girl was quiet, well-behaved to the point of being almost invisible in class. Evelyn had worried about that, the way Emma seemed to shrink into herself, as if taking up space might be an imposition. "The children are having their Christmas break," Caleb said, still turning that hat. "Figured you'd be heading somewhere. Family, maybe." "Oh." Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. "No, I'll be staying here. There's always work to catch up on, and I promised Mrs. Chen I'd help with the church preparations." "You do that every year." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Stay here. Help with the church. Spend Christmas Eve making sure everyone else has what they need." His eyes met hers, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. Recognition, maybe. Or accusation. "Never seen you at anyone's table come Christmas Day." The observation landed like a stone in still water. Evelyn wanted to deflect, to offer one of the careful explanations she'd perfected over the years, But something in Caleb's directness stripped away her usual defenses. I don't have family in Silver Creek, she said quietly, and I wouldn't want to impose on anyone's celebration. That what you think it'd be? An imposition? I think people have their own traditions, their own circles. I'm content with my own company. You're a terrible liar, Miss Mercer. The words should have stung, but they didn't. Maybe because they were true. Maybe because of the way he said them. Not cruel, just factual. The way you'd point out that snow was cold or fire was hot. Why are you here, Mr. Dawson? He took a breath and she realized he was nervous. The discovery was oddly humanizing. Caleb Dawson, who ran one of the largest ranches in the territory, who could break a wild horse or face down a blizzard without flinching, was nervous about whatever he'd come to say. I've got 2 children, he said finally. Emma, and my son Noah, he's 5. Too young for school yet, but he will be next year. I look forward to having him. They lost their mother 3 years ago. Fever took her in February. One day she was fine, next day she wasn't, and by the end of the week, he stopped, jaw working. Point is, it's been hard on them. House isn't what it used to be. I try, but I can't give them what she gave them. Evelyn's throat tightened. I'm so sorry for your loss. That's not why I'm telling you. He looked down at his hat, then back up at her. I'm telling you because I've watched you these past 2 years. Watched how you are with Emma. How you are with all the children, really, but especially the ones who need it most. You see them. Not just their schoolwork or their behavior, but them. That's my job. No, it's not. Your job is to teach them reading and arithmetic. What you do, that's something else. He paused. Emma came home last month talking about how you stayed late to help her with her writing. Said you told her that her mother would be proud of how hard she was working. She was struggling with her letters. I just wanted her to know. You made her cry, Caleb interrupted. In a good way. First time she's cried about her mother that wasn't just loss. It was like you gave her permission to remember the good parts. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. I'm not good at this, Caleb continued, frustration creeping into his voice. Talking about feelings, all that. But I can see what's in front of me, and what I see is a woman who gives everything to this town, to these children, and gets nothing back. Who decorates a schoolhouse every Christmas for other people's families while having none of her own. Who pretends to be fine with it, but isn't. Mr. Dawson, I'm asking if you'd spend Christmas at the ranch. The words hung in the air between them like something solid. Evelyn stared at him, sure she'd misheard. I know it's forward, he rushed on, and maybe inappropriate. But Emma's been asking if you could visit, and Noah keeps talking about the pretty teacher, even though he's never met you. Emma must have described you, and I thought... He ran a hand through his hair, dislodging snow. I thought maybe it would be good. For them. And for you. If you wanted. You're inviting me to spend Christmas with your family. Such as it is, yeah. Because you feel sorry for me. His head snapped up. No, because I think you'd make it better. The holiday, I mean, for the kids. They need... He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. They need what you have. That warmth, that way of making things feel less heavy. Evelyn's first instinct was to refuse. It was too strange, too intimate, too close to the longing she tried so hard to keep buried. Spending Christmas with a widower and his grieving children felt like stepping into someone else's life, beautiful and terrible, and not meant for her. But then she thought about Christmas Eve in the boarding house where she rented her room. Mrs. Patterson was kind enough, but she had her own family coming. Evelyn would eat her meal in her room, read by lamplight, maybe take a walk if the weather allowed. She'd done it before. She'd survive it again. Survival. What a low bar for existence. I don't want to intrude, she said carefully. You wouldn't be. I'm asking you to come. Your children might feel differently. Having a stranger in their home for the holiday, you're not a stranger to Emma, and Noah will love anyone who pays attention to him for more than 5 minutes. Something almost like a smile crossed Caleb's face. Kids desperate for a woman's touch. Mrs. Bailey, she's our housekeeper, does her best, but she's got her own grandkids to worry about. Comes 3 days a week, keeps things from falling apart completely, but it's not the same. No, it's not. Evelyn looked around the schoolhouse, at the decorations she'd hung with such care, at the empty benches, At the cold stove she was about to bank. She thought about her room at the boarding house. She thought about 7 Christmases spent pretending she'd chosen solitude rather than had it chosen for her. When would you want me to come? The relief on Caleb's face was immediate. Tomorrow? Christmas Eve? I could pick you up in the morning, bring you out to the ranch. You could stay through Christmas Day, or longer if you wanted. We've got room. I'd need to bring some things. Gifts for the children, maybe. You don't have to. I know, but I'd like to. He nodded slowly, putting his hat back on. All right then. I'll be here at 8 tomorrow morning. That work? That works? They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure how to end the conversation. Finally, Caleb moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Thank you, he said without turning around. I know this is strange, but I think it might be good. For all of us. Then he was gone, leaving Evelyn alone with the echo of his words and a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. She spent the evening in a kind of daze, going through the motions of closing up the schoolhouse while her mind spun in circles. What was she doing? What was she thinking? This wasn't like accepting an invitation to Sunday dinner or helping at a church social. This was entering someone's home, their private grief, their attempt at celebration despite everything they'd lost. But beneath the anxiety was something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. Back in her room, she pulled out the small trunk where she kept her few nice things. A dress that wasn't quite new but wasn't worn to threads either. A shawl her mother had made before she died. A book of fairy tales she'd been saving, maybe for her own children someday, though that someday seemed increasingly unlikely. The children. She should bring something for them. She worked late into the night, using fabric scraps and thread to make a small doll for Emma. Simple but sturdy, with yellow yarn for hair and a dress pieced together from an old apron. For Noah, she didn't have materials for a proper toy, but she had a wooden whistle she'd bought on impulse last summer. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. When she finally lay down to sleep, her mind wouldn't quiet. She kept thinking about Caleb's face when he'd said she wasn't a stranger to Emma, about the way he'd seen through her careful pretense of contentment, about 2 children who'd lost their mother and a man who clearly had no idea what to do with his own grief. You're walking into a house full of ghosts, she told herself. Don't expect to come out unchanged. But maybe that was exactly what she needed. 1. Caleb arrived exactly at 8, driving a wagon that had seen better days but was solid enough for the winter roads. Evelyn waited on the boarding house steps with her bag and the small bundle of wrapped gifts, watching him climb down to help her up. Morning, he said, his breath misting in the cold air. Good morning. He took her bag, his hands careful, then offered his arm to help her into the wagon. She took it, feeling the strength in his grip even through the layers of coat and glove. He'd shaved, she noticed, and his coat, while worn, was clean. They rode in silence for the first mile. The only sounds, the creak of the wagon and the steady clip of the horse's hooves on the frozen ground. Silver Creek fell away behind them, replaced by open country, rolling hills covered in snow, stands of pine dark against the white, mountains rising in the distance like the edges of the world. It's beautiful out here, Evelyn said finally. It's harsh, Caleb replied. But yeah, beautiful too, I suppose. She glanced at him. He sat with his shoulders hunched against the cold, eyes on the road ahead, face unreadable. He'd taken a risk yesterday, coming to the schoolhouse, being vulnerable. Now he seemed to have retreated back into himself, leaving her to wonder if he regretted the invitation. Tell me about Noah, she said, more to fill the silence than anything. Caleb's expression softened slightly. He's 5. Looks like his mother, same dark hair, same eyes. Talks a mile a minute when he's comfortable, but he's shy around new people. Might take him a bit to warm up to you. That's all right. I'm patient. He still asks for her sometimes. His mother, especially at night, wants to know when she's coming back. Caleb's jaw tightened. Had to explain it to him maybe 50 times. He's too young to really understand. And Emma? Emma understands too much. He was quiet for a moment. She was 9 when we lost Sarah, old enough to remember everything, old enough to try to fill her mother's shoes, which is... He shook his head. I've tried to tell her she doesn't have to do that she's allowed to just be a kid, but she doesn't listen. Children grieve in their own ways. That your professional opinion? There was an edge to the question that made Evelyn stiffen. I didn't mean... No, I'm sorry. He rubbed his face with one hand. That came out wrong. I'm not good at this. Talking, letting people in. Sarah used to handle all that. You don't have to explain yourself to me, Mr. Dawson. Caleb, if you're going to be spending Christmas at the ranch, might as well use my name. All right, Caleb. The name felt strange in her mouth, intimate, like crossing a line she couldn't quite see but could definitely feel. They rode on, and gradually the silence became less awkward. Caleb pointed out landmarks, the creek where they got their water in summer, the stand of trees where he'd built Emma a swing that she'd outgrown, the ridge where you could see 3 counties on a clear day. Evelyn listened, piecing together a picture of his life out here. Isolated, beautiful, difficult. You ever think about leaving? She asked. He looked at her sharply. The ranch? The territory. Going somewhere easier. Warmer, maybe. Every day. The answer surprised her with its honesty. But this is what I know. What I built with Sarah. Selling it would feel like, I don't know, giving up. Admitting she died for nothing. She didn't die for the ranch. No. She died from a fever that a better doctor might have caught sooner. But we're out here because I wanted to make something of my own, thought I could build a life, prove I was more than just a ranch hand's son. He laughed bitterly. Proved it all right. Proved I could work myself half to death and still lose everything that mattered. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. The rawness of it sat between them like a third passenger. I'm sorry, Caleb said after a moment. You didn't sign up for my self-pity. I signed up for Christmas with your family. I think that includes the difficult parts. He glanced at her, something shifting in his expression. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer, maybe. More delicate. You've got steel in you. You have to, teaching children. They can smell weakness. That surprised a laugh out of him, a real one, brief but genuine. Yeah, I suppose they can. The ranch came into view around noon, nestled in a valley with hills rising behind it. The main house was larger than Evelyn had imagined, 2 stories, built from logs and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Outbuildings clustered nearby. A barn, a smokehouse, what looked like a bunkhouse. Smoke rose from the chimney, a promise of warmth. But there was something wrong about it too. It took Evelyn a moment to identify what. Then she realized. The place felt abandoned despite the smoke, despite the obvious signs of life. Curtains hung crooked in windows. The porch railing had a section that needed repair. Snow had drifted against the door like no one had cleared it in days. It was a house that had given up on itself. Caleb must have seen her expression because he said, I know it needs work. I keep meaning to get to it, but there's always something more urgent. Fence that needs mending, cattle that need moving, equipment that breaks down. It's a lot for one person. I've got hands who help with the ranch work, but the house... He trailed off. That was Sarah's domain. I don't have her eye for it. They pulled up in front, and immediately the door burst open. A small boy came flying out, barefoot despite the snow, wearing pants that were too short and a shirt that might have been white once. Papa! Noah launched himself at Caleb as soon as he climbed down from the wagon. You were gone forever. It was only 2 hours, son. Caleb caught him, swinging him up. What did I tell you about going outside without boots? I forgot. Noah's attention had already shifted to Evelyn. He stared at her with huge dark eyes, one hand twisted in his father's coat. Is that the teacher? This is Miss Mercer. Evelyn, this is Noah. Hello, Noah. Evelyn climbed down from the wagon, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. It's very nice to meet you. Noah buried his face in Caleb's shoulder, suddenly shy. Give him time, Caleb murmured to Evelyn, then louder. Where's your sister? Inside, she's making bread wrong. What do you mean wrong? She's crying in it. Caleb's expression tightened. He set Noah down. Go put on boots. Now. The boy scampered back inside. Caleb picked up Evelyn's bag, gesturing for her to follow. Sorry about that. Emma gets emotional sometimes when she's trying to do things her mother used to do. They stepped into the house, and Evelyn had to suppress a reaction. The interior matched the exterior, beautiful bones under a layer of neglect. The main room was large, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall and a kitchen area to the right. Furniture was pushed against walls at odd angles. Dust lay thick on surfaces. Dirty dishes were stacked by the sink. And in the middle of the kitchen, a girl stood with her hands in a bowl of dough, tears streaming down her face. Emma Dawson was 12, though she carried herself like someone much older. Her dark hair was pulled back in a braid that was coming undone. She wore an apron that was too big, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her arms up to the elbows. When she saw Evelyn, she quickly wiped her face with the back of one hand, leaving a streak of flour across her cheek. "Papa, you're back." "Emma, this is Miss Mercer. She's going to be staying with us for Christmas." "I know. You told me." Emma's voice was carefully neutral, but her eyes, red-rimmed and defensive, told a different story. Evelyn set down her bundle and moved slowly into the kitchen, giving Emma space to bolt if she needed to. "What are you making?" "Bread. We're trying to. It's not working. Can I see?" Emma stepped back, gesturing helplessly at the bowl. Evelyn looked. The dough was overworked, tough, and resistant. It would make bread that was dense and hard, edible, but joyless. "This is a good start," Evelyn said carefully, "but I think maybe the dough got a little too much mixing. Bread can be finicky that way." "Mama's never was." Emma's voice cracked. "She made bread every week and it was always perfect, and I can't even do this one simple thing." "Hey," Evelyn caught the girl's flour-covered hand. "Your mother had years of practice. How many times have you made bread?" "This is the 4th time." "Then you're still learning. That's allowed. But I need to know how. Papa can't cook, and Mrs. Bailey only comes 3 times a week, and no one eats proper meals, and I'm the only one who can—" "Emma!" Caleb's voice cut through her rising panic. "We talked about this." "I know, but you're 12. You don't have to run the house. Someone has to." The words hung in the air, sharp and terrible. Emma's face crumpled, and she turned away, shoulders shaking. Caleb moved toward her but stopped, hands hanging useless at his sides. He looked lost. Evelyn made a decision. "Caleb, why don't you show me where I'll be sleeping? Give Emma a moment." He hesitated, clearly torn, but finally nodded. "Upstairs, 2nd door on the right." Evelyn followed him up a narrow staircase to the 2nd floor. The room he showed her was small but clean, cleaner than the rest of the house, actually. A bed with a quilt, a washstand, a window that looked out over the valley. "This was the guest room," Caleb said. "Back when we had guests, I made sure Mrs. Bailey cleaned it yesterday. It's perfect. Thank you." He set down her bag but didn't leave. Instead, he stood by the window, looking out at nothing. "This was a mistake." "What was?" "Inviting you here, thinking I could—" He shook his head. "You're seeing us at our worst. The house is a disaster. Emma's falling apart trying to be her mother. Noah still wets the bed half the time because he's scared of the dark. And I'm—" He stopped. "You're trying," Evelyn finished quietly. "Trying isn't enough. It's something." He turned to look at her, and she saw the exhaustion in his face. Not just physical tiredness, though there was that too. This was deeper. The exhaustion of someone who'd been carrying weight too heavy for too long. "Why did you really invite me?" she asked. "I told you, for the children." "Is that all?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "No, I invited you because watching you live your life, this careful, controlled life where you give everything and ask for nothing, it reminded me of what I've been doing, going through the motions, surviving instead of living. And I thought—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I thought maybe if I did something different, something outside the routine, maybe it would crack things open a little, make space for something better." "That's a lot of pressure to put on a Christmas visit." "I know. I'm sorry." "I wasn't complaining." Evelyn moved closer, close enough to see the gray threading through his dark hair, the lines around his eyes. "I was just pointing out that you might be expecting too much from this. From me. Or maybe I'm finally expecting something at all." The words settled between them, heavy with implication. Evelyn knew she should step back, create distance, keep this professional. But there was something in his eyes, a desperate kind of hope, that she recognized because she'd seen it in her own mirror. "Let me help with Emma," she said instead. "I know bread, and I know 12-year-old girls who are trying too hard to be grown." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you." They went back downstairs together. Emma had abandoned the bread dough and was standing at the sink, staring out the window with her arms wrapped around herself. Noah sat at the table, swinging his legs and humming tunelessly. Evelyn rolled up her sleeves. "Emma, honey, can you show me where the flour is? I think we need to start fresh." The girl turned, surprised. "You don't have to—" "I know, but I'd like to, if you'll let me." Something shifted in Emma's face. She looked at her father, then back at Evelyn. "Okay?" For the next hour, Evelyn worked beside Emma in the kitchen, showing her how to tell when dough was properly kneaded, how to let it rest, how to shape it for rising. They didn't talk much beyond the mechanics of bread making, but Evelyn felt the girl slowly relaxing beside her. Noah gradually crept closer, drawn by curiosity. Evelyn gave him small tasks, fetching the salt, counting eggs, stirring melted butter. He chattered at her constantly, a running stream of consciousness about everything and nothing. "Do you live in town? Do you like horses?" "We have horses. I'm not allowed to ride them yet, but Papa says when I'm bigger, Emma can ride. She's good at it. Mama used to ride too, but then she got sick, and now she's in heaven. Do you know where heaven is? Is it past the mountains?" "Noah, hush," Emma said, embarrassed. But Evelyn just smiled. "I do live in town, and I like horses very much, though I'm not very good at riding them. And heaven—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think it's wherever the people we love go to wait for us. Maybe it's past the mountains. Maybe it's somewhere we can't see yet." "Mama's waiting for us there," Noah said confidently. "She promised she'd always be there when we needed her." Evelyn's throat tightened. She glanced at Caleb, who was watching from the doorway with an expression she couldn't read. By late afternoon, the bread was rising, and the kitchen smelled like yeast and promise. Emma had stopped crying. Noah had flour in his hair and a smile on his face. The house felt different, not fixed, but maybe slightly less broken. Caleb made coffee while Evelyn cleaned up, working around each other in the small kitchen with surprising ease. When she reached past him for a towel, their shoulders brushed, and she felt him tense. "Sorry," she murmured. "You're fine." But he moved away, putting distance between them again. Evelyn told herself not to read into it. This was already complicated enough without adding whatever undercurrent kept pulling them toward each other. As the sun set and the windows turned dark, Mrs. Bailey arrived, a stout woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and capable hands. She took in the scene with obvious surprise. "Well," she said, untying her scarf, "this is more life than I've seen in this kitchen for months." "Mrs. Bailey, this is Miss Mercer," Caleb said. "She's staying for Christmas." "I can see that." Mrs. Bailey's eyes moved from Evelyn to the rising bread to the children, who were sitting at the table working on a puzzle together. "Looks like you've been busy. Just helping where I can." Mrs. Bailey hung up her coat. "Mr. Dawson, I brought the ham you asked for, and some vegetables from my cellar. Figured you'd want a proper Christmas dinner. Thank you. I'll settle up with you." "You'll do no such thing. Consider it part of my gift to these children." She moved into the kitchen, shooing Caleb out. "Now then, Miss Mercer and I will handle supper. You take those little ones and make sure they wash up proper. All of you look like you've been in a flower fight." Caleb ushered the children upstairs, leaving Evelyn alone with Mrs. Bailey. The older woman worked in silence for a few minutes, pulling out pots and ingredients with practiced efficiency. Then, "He told me he was inviting you. Asked my opinion on it." Evelyn's hand stilled in the dishwater. "And what did you say?" "I told him it was about damn time he did something for himself instead of just surviving day to day." Mrs. Bailey began peeling potatoes with quick, efficient strokes. "That man has been dying by inches since Sarah passed. And those children, with him. This house used to have joy in it. Now it's just a place they sleep between remembering. I'm not sure what you expect me to do about that." "Nothing. Everything. Whatever feels right." Mrs. Bailey looked up, her gaze direct. "I've known Caleb Dawson since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Good man, loyal to a fault, but he's got it in his head that moving forward means betraying his wife's memory. Someone needs to show him that's nonsense." "Mrs. Bailey, I'm just here for Christmas." "Sure you are." The older woman's smile was knowing. "And I'm the Queen of England. Look, I'm not saying you need to fix everything. I'm just saying, don't let him push you away when he gets scared, because he will get scared, and when he does, he'll try to shut everyone out again." Evelyn didn't know how to respond to that, so she focused on the dishes. But Mrs. Bailey's words sat heavy in her mind. Supper was a strange, awkward, wonderful affair. They sat around the table, the four of them plus Mrs. Bailey, who insisted on staying to make sure things went smoothly. The food was simple but good. Noah talked nonstop. Emma ate quietly, watching Evelyn with an expression that might have been hope or might have been fear. Caleb said little, but Evelyn caught him looking at her more than once, his face troubled. After supper, Mrs. Bailey left with promises to return on Christmas Day. The children helped clean up, or tried to, though Noah mostly just rearranged dirt, and then Caleb announced it was time for bed. "But it's Christmas Eve tomorrow," Noah protested. "Can't we stay up?" "Tomorrow night you can stay up a bit later. Tonight, bed." "Will Miss Mercer be here in the morning?" "I'll be here," Evelyn promised. Noah hugged her impulsively, surprising them both. "Good. You smell nice. Like bread and flowers." "Noah, that's enough," Caleb said, but he was smiling slightly. "Say good night." "Good night, Miss Mercer. Good night, Emma. Good night, Papa. Good night, house. Good night, bread." "Noah!" The boy giggled and thundered up the stairs. Emma followed more slowly, pausing at the bottom to look back at Evelyn. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping today." "You're welcome, Emma. Will you—" The girl hesitated. "Will you teach me more tomorrow? About cooking?" "I'd be happy to." Emma nodded, then disappeared upstairs. Evelyn heard Caleb moving around in the children's rooms, the low murmur of his voice as he settled them down. She stood in the kitchen, suddenly unsure what to do with herself. The house creaked around her. Wind rattled the windows. The fire in the main room crackled and popped. It felt alive in a way her room at the boarding house never did. Alive and sad and trying. Caleb came back down 20 minutes later, looking exhausted. Noah wanted 3 stories. Emma wanted to talk about her mother, and He sank into a chair by the fire. "I'm terrible at both." "You're here. That counts." "Does it?" Evelyn sat in the chair across from him. "My mother died when I was 16. My father lasted another year before his heart gave out. I know what it's like to lose people, and I know what it's like to watch someone try to be both parents at once." "Who tried for you?" "No one. I went to live with an aunt who took me in out of obligation but made it clear I was a burden. Worked my way through school, got my teaching certificate, came west because there was nothing keeping me east." She stared into the fire. "I tell you this not for sympathy, but so you'll understand that I recognize what you're doing here, how hard you're trying, even when it feels like failing." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you ever get used to it? The missing?" "No. You just get better at carrying it." That's a depressing answer. It's an honest one. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Evelyn felt something shift in the air between them. A recognition, a connection, something dangerous. "I'm glad you're here," he said quietly. "So am I." They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn down. Eventually, Evelyn excused herself and went upstairs to her room. She could hear Noah's soft snoring from one room, the creak of bed springs from Emma's, the house settling into sleep. She stood at her window looking out at the snow-covered valley, the dark mountains beyond. Somewhere out there was her old life, safe, controlled, lonely. Here was something else, something messy and complicated and full of people who needed things she didn't know how to give. But maybe that was all right. Maybe needing and being needed was better than careful solitude. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow she would help these broken people try to celebrate. And maybe, just maybe, she would let them help put her back together too. She climbed into bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin. Through the walls she heard Caleb's footsteps as he checked on the children one more time before going to his own room. Heard his door close. Heard the house breathe around them all. For the first time in 7 years, Evelyn Mercer fell asleep on Christmas Eve and didn't feel completely alone. Evelyn woke to the sound of something breaking downstairs. She sat up in the unfamiliar bed, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. The Dawson Ranch, Christmas Eve morning. Gray light filtered through the curtains, and when she looked out the window, she saw fresh snow had fallen during the night, covering everything in a clean white blanket that made the world look deceptively peaceful. Another crash from below, followed by a child's wail. She pulled on her robe and hurried downstairs, her bare feet cold on the wooden steps. In the kitchen, she found Noah standing in a puddle of milk, glass shards scattered around his feet, sobbing like his heart was breaking. "Don't move," Evelyn said sharply, and the boy froze. She grabbed a towel and carefully picked her way through the mess to lift him out of the danger zone. "Are you hurt?" "I wanted to make breakfast," Noah hiccuped, "like Mama used to. But I dropped the milk and now Papa's going to be mad and everything's ruined." "Shh, you're all right. Let me see your feet." She checked him over carefully. No cuts, just milk-soaked socks and wounded pride. She set him on a chair and went to find a broom, trying to ignore the way the kitchen looked in daylight, worse than yesterday somehow. The counters were sticky. The floor needed scrubbing. The window over the sink had a crack running through it that someone had covered with oiled paper. What happened? Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a nightgown that had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to identify. "Accident with the milk. Can you get your brother some dry socks while I clean this up?" Emma nodded and took Noah's hand, leading him away. Evelyn heard them on the stairs, heard Noah's continued sniffling, and Emma's patient voice trying to soothe him. The girl sounded exhausted, and it wasn't even 7 in the morning. She was sweeping up the last of the glass when Caleb came down, dressed but looking like he hadn't slept. His hair stood up on one side and there was a crease on his face from the pillow. "I heard something break." Noah tried to make breakfast. The milk didn't survive. Evelyn dumped the glass carefully into a bucket. "He's fine. Just shaken." Caleb scrubbed a hand over his face. "He gets these ideas, tries to do things Sarah used to do, and then..." He looked at the mess, the spilled milk spreading across the uneven floorboards. "I should have been up earlier, should have been watching him." "You can't watch him every second. Tell that to my son when he steps on broken glass because I was still in bed." There was an edge to his voice that hadn't been there last night. Evelyn recognized it, the particular anger of someone who was really furious at themselves but couldn't quite say it. She'd heard it plenty of times from parents who felt like they were failing. "The bread we made yesterday is in the box by the stove," she said, keeping her tone neutral. "If you slice some of that and heat it in the pan with a little butter, it makes a decent breakfast. There are eggs too if you want them." "I can manage my own kitchen, Miss Mercer." The formality stung more than it should have. Miss Mercer. Not Evelyn. Definitely not the tentative warmth they'd found last night by the fire. "Of course," she said quietly. "I'll just finish cleaning this up." They worked in stiff silence. Caleb pulled out the bread and began sawing at it with more force than necessary, while Evelyn mopped up the milk and tried not to feel like she'd made a mistake coming here. This was what Mrs. Bailey had warned her about. He'll get scared and try to shut everyone out. Emma and Noah came back downstairs, the boy now wearing mismatched socks and a determined expression. "I'm sorry I made a mess, Papa." "It's all right, son. Just ask for help next time." "I wanted to surprise you. Mama always made breakfast, and I thought, your mama was a grown woman who knew her way around a kitchen," Caleb interrupted, his voice harder than he probably meant it to be. "You're 5. You don't need to be making breakfast." Noah's face crumpled. Emma put a protective arm around him. "He was trying to help," she said, and there was steel in her voice that reminded Evelyn of the girl's father. "I know what he was trying to do, but it's not his job to..." Caleb stopped, took a breath. "Just sit down. I'll have food ready in a minute." Breakfast was tense. The bread was good, but Caleb had scorched the eggs, and the butter was rancid, something no one mentioned but everyone tasted. Noah pushed his food around his plate without eating. Emma ate mechanically, her eyes on the table. Caleb didn't eat at all, just drank coffee that had gone bitter from sitting too long on the stove. Evelyn tried to think of something to say, some way to ease the tension, but everything that came to mind felt false. So she ate her bread and watched this family not quite fall apart at the breakfast table. Finally, Noah spoke up. "Are we still going to have Christmas?" "Of course we are," Caleb said. "But you're mad." "I'm not mad." "You sound mad." "Noah, it's because I broke the milk, isn't it? Because I can't do anything right, and I'm not big enough, and I'm not Mama." The boy was crying again, huge gasping sobs that shook his whole small body. Caleb stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, and for a moment Evelyn thought he was going to walk out. Instead, he came around the table and scooped Noah up, holding him tight. "You listen to me," he said, his voice rough. "You didn't do anything wrong. You hear me? Nothing. I'm not mad at you. He trailed off, clearly struggling. I'm just tired. And when I'm tired, I'm not good at saying things the right way. You miss Mama. Yeah, I miss Mama. Me too. Noah wrapped his arms around his father's neck. But Miss Mercer smells nice, and she knows about bread, and maybe she can help us have Christmas anyway. Caleb's eyes met Evelyn's over his son's head. She saw the war happening in his face, gratitude and resentment, hope and fear, all tangled up together. Maybe she can, he said finally. The moment passed. Caleb set Noah down and cleared the dishes with quick, efficient movements. Emma helped without being asked. Evelyn sat at the table feeling like an intruder, wondering if she should offer to leave. Go back to town. Let this family work out their grief without a stranger witnessing it. But then Noah climbed into the chair next to her and said, Will you tell me a story? Noah, Miss Mercer doesn't want to, Emma started. Actually, I'd like to, Evelyn said. What kind of story? A happy one with animals and snow. So she told him about a fox who lived in the mountains and learned to make friends with the winter wind, spinning a tale that was half remembered from her own childhood and half made up on the spot. Noah listened with his whole body, leaning forward, eyes wide. Even Emma drifted closer, pretending to wipe down the counter, but clearly listening. Caleb worked at the sink, his back to them, but Evelyn saw the tension slowly leave his shoulders as her voice filled the kitchen. When she finished, Noah demanded another story. Then another. By the third one, he'd crawled into her lap, his small weight warm and trusting. All right, that's enough, Caleb said eventually. Miss Mercer isn't here to entertain you all day. But I like her stories. Even so, she's a guest. He dried his hands on a towel and finally turned to face them. I need to check on the horses. Emma, you help Miss Mercer with whatever she needs. Noah, you stay inside where it's warm. Can I come to the barn? Not today. But not today, Noah. The boy's face fell, but he didn't argue. Caleb grabbed his coat and hat and disappeared outside, leaving the three of them in the kitchen. He's not usually like this, Emma said quietly after the door closed. This angry. He's not angry at you, Evelyn said. I know. He's angry at everything else. Emma picked up the dish towel her father had abandoned, folding it with precise, careful movements. Christmas is hard. It was Mama's favorite time of year. She'd make everything special, decorations and special food and little surprises. Last year, Papa tried to do it himself, and it was... She swallowed. It was awful. Everything went wrong, and Noah cried, and Papa just gave up halfway through. This year, he said we weren't even going to try. But then he invited you, and I thought maybe it would be different. Yeah. Emma looked at her with eyes that had seen too much loss for someone so young. Do you think it can be different? Evelyn didn't know how to answer that. She thought about her own Christmases over the past 7 years, the careful solitude, the practiced contentment, the loneliness she'd convinced herself was choice rather than circumstance. Different didn't necessarily mean better. But looking at Emma's hopeful face, at Noah playing with a piece of string on the floor, at this kitchen that needed so much more than cleaning, she couldn't bring herself to say that. I think we can try, she said instead. If you'll help me. Help you with what? Making this place feel a little less sad. Emma's eyes widened. Papa won't like it if we change things. I'm not talking about changing things, just... Evelyn looked around the kitchen, at the crooked curtains and dusty surfaces and general air of defeat. Just giving everything a bit of care. Your mother loved this house, didn't she? She said it was her castle. Even when things broke or leaked, or the wind came through the walls, she said it was still the most beautiful place in the world because we were all in it. Then let's treat it like she would have. Not to replace her, but to honor her. Do you think she'd want it looking like this? Emma's jaw set. No, she'd hate it. Well then, they started in the kitchen. Evelyn sent Noah to pick up all the small things on the floor. Bits of string, a forgotten button, a wooden spoon that had rolled under the cabinet. Emma brought hot water from the stove, and together they scrubbed the counters, the table, the chairs. Evelyn washed the dishes properly while Emma brush-dried, and put them away. It was hard work, the kind that made your back ache and your hands raw. But there was something almost meditative about it, too. The rhythm of washing and drying, The visible progress as surfaces went from grimy to clean, the way the kitchen slowly transformed from defeated to just tired. Noah got bored with picking up and started helping by reorganizing the pantry according to his own mysterious logic. Emma scolded him twice before Evelyn intervened. "Let him be creative," she said. "We can fix it later if needed." "But he's putting the flour with the nails." "Then we'll know where to find both." Emma looked scandalized, but a smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Mama would have said the same thing. They worked through the morning. Evelyn taught Emma how to make a paste from baking soda and vinegar to clean stubborn stains. They took down the crooked curtains and discovered they just needed a few stitches to hang properly again. Emma proved surprisingly good with a needle, quick, precise stitches that would hold. "Mama taught me," she said when Evelyn complimented her work. She said every girl should know how to mend things, that you can't always buy new when something breaks. "Your mother was a smart woman." "She was the smartest." Emma paused in her sewing. "Do you think she'd like you?" The question caught Evelyn off guard. "I don't know. I hope so." "I think she would. You're not trying to be her. Some people, when they come around, they act like she never existed, or they try to do things exactly like she did them, which is somehow worse. But you're just yourself." "I don't know how to be anyone else." "That's why she'd like you." They hung the curtains back up, and suddenly the kitchen looked intentional instead of neglected. Emma stepped back, surveying their work with satisfaction. "It looks better." "It does." Evelyn glanced at the clock. Nearly noon already. "Should we make dinner? Something your father might actually eat?" "He doesn't eat much anymore. Says he's not hungry." "What does he eat?" "Coffee, mostly. Sometimes bread if I make it. Mrs. Bailey brings stew when she comes, and he'll have some of that if I stand over him." Evelyn made a decision. "Do you know how to make chicken soup?" "Mama used to make it when we were sick, but I've never tried." "It's not hard, and it's the kind of thing that's hard to refuse." Evelyn moved to the pantry, mentally inventorying what they had to work with. "We'll need a chicken, though, or at least some good bones." "There's chickens in the coop. Papa hasn't butchered any in a while because—" Emma trailed off. "Because Sarah used to do it. Because everything in this house was frozen in the moment she died." "Can you ask your father if we can have one? Tell him I'll take care of the preparation." Emma looked doubtful but went to find her coat. She came back 20 minutes later, cheeks red from cold, carrying a plucked chicken that had clearly been dead for a few hours. "He'd already killed it this morning," she said. "Was planning to have Mrs. Bailey deal with it when she came. He said thank you for helping." It was something, at least. Evelyn set to work on the chicken while Emma watched, teaching her the steps as she went. How to join it properly, which pieces were best for soup, how to use everything and waste nothing. Noah watched from his spot on the floor, making a castle out of kindling and talking to himself in the elaborate way of small children. "Why did you become a teacher?" Emma asked as Evelyn added vegetables to the pot. "Because I was good at school and someone told me I could make a living from it. Not very romantic, I'm afraid." "Do you like it?" "Most days. Children are honest in a way adults forget how to be. They tell you when they're struggling instead of pretending everything's fine." "Papa pretends everything's fine." "Most adults do." Emma was quiet for a moment, watching the soup begin to simmer. "I pretend too, that I'm all right with Mama being gone, that I can handle taking care of Noah and the house and everything else. But I'm not all right. I'm tired all the time and scared I'm doing everything wrong, and sometimes I just want to scream." Evelyn set down her spoon and gave Emma her full attention. "Have you told your father this?" "I can't. He's already caring so much. If I tell him I can't handle it, he'll just feel worse." "So you're protecting him by suffering in silence." "Someone has to be strong." "Emma, you're 12 years old. You shouldn't have to be strong. You should get to be a child." "There's no room for that anymore." Emma's voice cracked. "Everything changed when Mama died. The house stopped working right. Papa stopped smiling. Noah stopped sleeping through the night. Someone had to step up and I was the only one who could, so I did. But I don't know how much longer I can keep doing it." The words came out in a rush, like poison finally being drained from a wound. Emma's hands shook. Evelyn reached out and took them, holding steady. "You've been carrying this family on your back for 3 years." "Someone had to."
But it shouldn't have been you. You're not the parent here, Emma. You're the child. And you deserve to grieve your mother without also having to replace her. But if I don't, then things will fall apart. I know, but maybe they need to fall apart a little before they can be put back together the right way.
Emma pulled her hands back, wrapping her arms around herself. You don't understand. This is all we have. This family, this house. If it falls apart, there's nothing left. There's still you, still Noah, still your father. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough. I know. They stood there in the kitchen, the soup bubbling between them, the weight of loss hanging in the air like smoke. Finally, Emma wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders, that practiced resilience clicking back into place. I should set the table, she said. Emma, please. I just need to do something normal. Evelyn let her go. Sometimes people needed to retreat, needed to put their armor back on before they could face the world. She understood that better than most. The soup was nearly ready when Caleb came back inside, stamping snow from his boots. He'd been gone for hours, long enough that Evelyn had started to worry, but he looked calmer than he had at breakfast. The hard edges softened slightly. Something smells good, he said, hanging up his coat. Chicken soup. It'll be ready in about 10 minutes. He moved to the sink to wash his hands, and Evelyn saw him notice the cleaned kitchen, the rehung curtains, the swept floor. His expression was hard to read. You didn't have to do all this. Emma helped. We were just keeping busy. Still, it's more than... He stopped, jaw working. It's been a while since the place looked this clean. It's a good house. It just needed some attention. Caleb dried his hands slowly, looking around the kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time in years. Sarah used to keep it spotless. Made me feel guilty sometimes, how hard she worked to make everything nice. I'd tell her it didn't matter if the floors were scrubbed, and she'd say it mattered to her. That taking care of our home was how she showed love. She sounds like she was remarkable. She was. He hung the towel back up with careful precision. I failed her. Brought her out to this isolated place, worked all the time, couldn't even get a decent doctor when she needed one. And now I can't even keep her house the way she would have wanted it. Caleb, no, it's true. Look at this place. Look at our children. Emma's trying to be her mother. Noah cries himself to sleep half the time. And I'm so busy trying to hold everything together that I'm barely holding anything at all. The confession hung in the air between them. Evelyn thought about offering comfort, reassurance, all the things you're supposed to say. But she'd told Emma that children were honest, and maybe adults should try it too. You're right, she said. You're failing at parts of this. The house is falling apart. Your children are struggling. You're not handling your grief well. She saw him flinch but continued. But you're also still here, still trying, still showing up for them every day even when it's hard. That counts for something. Does it? Ask your children. As if on cue, Noah came running into the kitchen and threw himself at his father's legs. Papa, I made a castle out of the firewood and Miss Mercer didn't even get mad. Caleb picked him up, and Noah immediately started chattering about his day. The stories, the cleaning, the soup, everything in a jumbled rush of excitement. Over the boy's head, Caleb's eyes met Evelyn's. Thank you, he mouthed. She nodded and turned back to the stove, giving him space with his son. They ate dinner together, the four of them crowded around the kitchen table. The soup was good, rich and warming, with vegetables from the root cellar and herbs Evelyn had found in a jar at the back of the pantry. Noah ate 2 bowls. Emma ate 1.5. Even Caleb managed to finish a full serving, though Evelyn suspected Emma had been right about him not eating much lately. He looked thinner than he should, worn down. This is really good, Emma said. Better than mine. You're learning. That's what matters. Can you teach me more? Not just cooking, but other things. Mama stuff. The question made Evelyn's chest tight. I'd be happy to teach you whatever I can. After dinner, Noah begged for another story. Then another. Caleb built up the fire in the main room, and they all settled there. Noah on the floor with his kindling castle, Emma curled in a chair with some mending, Caleb in another chair staring into the flames. Evelyn found herself talking about her own childhood, stories she hadn't thought about in years. The farm where she'd grown up, her father teaching her to read by lantern light, her mother's garden, the way snow looked on the mountains back east, different from the snow here, but still beautiful. Why did you leave?
Emma asked. Because there was nothing left for me there. My parents were gone. The farm was sold. And I thought maybe I could find something new, something mine.
Did you? Evelyn looked around the room, at this man and his children, at this house that was slowly coming back to life, at the uncertain future spreading out before all of them. I'm not sure yet, she said honestly. Ask me after Christmas. They stayed up later than they should have, the four of them in that warm room while the wind howled outside. Noah fell asleep on the floor, and Caleb carried him up to bed. Emma lasted another hour before her eyes started drooping.
Go on, Evelyn said gently. I'll bank the fire. Will you still be here in the morning? I promised, didn't I? Emma hugged her quickly, fiercely, then disappeared upstairs. Evelyn heard her footsteps overhead, heard the creak of bed ropes as she climbed under her covers. She was poking at the fire when Caleb came back down. He'd taken off his boots and his hair was mussed from tucking Noah in. He looked exhausted, but somehow less haunted than he had this morning. You're good with them, he said, settling into his chair. They're easy to be good with. No, they're not. They're grieving and angry and confused, and most people don't know what to do with that. But you just... He gestured helplessly. You make it seem natural. I spent 7 years learning how to be around children who are hurting. Silver Creek has its share of loss. Still, not everyone can do what you do.
They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn low. Finally, Caleb spoke again. I'm sorry about this morning, the way I acted. You were tired. I was afraid. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Last night was good. Really good. The house felt alive again. The children were happy. And I woke up this morning and panicked because I thought, what if this is wrong? What if I'm betraying Sarah by letting someone else into our life? What if I'm failing her by moving forward? Are you asking me or telling me?
I don't know anymore. He scrubbed a hand over his face. When she was dying, she made me promise something. She said I had to take care of the children, had to make sure they grew up happy, and I've been trying, but every day it feels like I'm failing a little bit more. Then you show up, and within 24 hours you've done more for this family than I've managed in 3 years. And I don't know whether to be grateful or ashamed. Be both, Evelyn said. People are allowed to feel more than one thing at a time. He laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's just true. Caleb was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. I keep expecting to see her. In the kitchen, in the hallway, in our bed. Every morning I wake up and for just a second I forget she's gone. And then I remember and it's like losing her all over again. I thought it would get easier. Everyone said it would get easier, but it hasn't. Maybe it doesn't get easier. Maybe you just get better at living with it. That's what you said last night, about missing people. It's still true. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Evelyn felt something shift between them. A door opening, a possibility emerging. What are you running from, Evelyn Mercer? The question caught her off guard. Who says I'm running? You told me yourself. Came west because there was nothing keeping you east. That's running. Or it's starting over. What's the difference? She thought about that. I'm not sure there is one. They sat with that truth between them. Outside, the wind died down. The house creaked and settled. Somewhere upstairs, Noah cried out in his sleep and then fell silent again. Thank you, Caleb said finally, for being here, for helping, for not running away when you saw how broken we all are. You're not broken. You're grieving. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Broken things can't be fixed. Grieving people can learn to live again if they let themselves. He stood abruptly, and for a moment Evelyn thought he was going to walk away. Instead, he moved to the mantel where a small portrait sat, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, smiling at whoever had captured her image. Sarah. She would have liked you, Caleb said, touching the frame lightly. She always said I needed someone who'd call me on my nonsense, who wouldn't let me wallow. I haven't known you long enough to call you on anything. You told me this morning I was failing. That's pretty direct. You asked for honesty. I know. He turned to face her. And I'm asking for it again. What do you see when you look at this family?
Evelyn chose her words carefully. I see people who love each other but don't know how to say it anymore. I see children who need their father to be present, not perfect. I see a man who's punishing himself for something that wasn't his fault. And I see a house that could be a home again, if anyone had the courage to let it. The words landed hard. Caleb's expression shuddered, and Evelyn thought she'd gone too far. But then his shoulders sagged, and he sank back into his chair.
Courage, he repeated. That's a generous word for it. What would you call it? Betrayal. Moving on feels like saying she didn't matter, that her death was just something to get over. Or moving on is honoring what she wanted for you, for the children. Do you think she'd want Noah crying himself to sleep? Emma trying to be the mother? You starving yourself and pretending it's fine? No, she'd hate it. Then maybe the real betrayal is staying stuck.
The fire popped, sending up a shower of sparks. Caleb watched them rise and fade, his face illuminated by the dying flames. I don't know how to not be stuck, he admitted. This is all I know now. The grief, the guilt, the going through motions. I've built my whole life around it. Then build something different. Just like that? No, not just like that. It'll be hard and messy, and you'll probably fail a dozen times before you get it right. But the alternative is staying here, in this frozen moment, until your children are grown and gone, and you're alone in a house full of ghosts. The truth of it hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Caleb stood again, moving to the window. Snow was falling outside, thick and soft, covering the world in white. Stay, he said suddenly. I am staying. Through Christmas, like we agreed. No, I mean, stay longer, a week, 2 weeks, however long you can. He turned to look at her, and his expression was raw. The children need you. The house needs you. He stopped, swallowed. I need someone to show me how to do this differently. Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest. This was dangerous territory, getting more involved with this family, with this man, with these wounded children. She could feel herself standing on the edge of something that would change her life irrevocably. Caleb, I know it's asking too much. I know you have your own life in town, but please, just think about it. She should say no, should protect herself, should maintain the careful distance she'd spent 7 years perfecting. But when she looked at him, at the hope and fear warring in his face, at the desperate need he was finally letting her see, she found she couldn't. I'll think about it, she said. He nodded, and something like relief crossed his features. That's all I can ask. They stood there in the firelight, the space between them charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Then Caleb cleared his throat and stepped back. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. The children will be up early. And you? I'll bank the fire. Check the stock one more time, the usual. Will you actually sleep, or will you lie awake all night thinking too much? A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. You don't pull punches, do you? You asked for honesty.
So I did. He moved toward the door, then paused.
Evelyn, whatever you decide about staying longer, I meant what I said. You've already given us more than you know. Even if it's just these few days, it matters. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the dying fire and a decision that felt impossibly heavy. She climbed the stairs slowly, her body aching from the day's work. In her room, she stood at the window and looked out at the snow-covered valley, at the mountains rising black against the starlit sky. Somewhere out there was her old life, safe, solitary, small. Here was something else entirely, something that terrified and tempted her in equal measure. She thought about Emma's face when she'd admitted to being tired, about Noah falling asleep in her lap, about Caleb's desperate plea for her to stay, about this house that needed so much more than cleaning to become whole again, about the way her heart had lifted when he'd asked her not to leave. She climbed into bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin. Through the walls, she could hear the house breathing, Caleb moving around downstairs, the children sleeping, the wind testing the window panes. All of it alive and messy, and nothing like the careful solitude she'd convinced herself she wanted. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow she would help this family try to celebrate. And maybe, just maybe, she would find the courage to reach for something more than survival. For both of them. Christmas Eve morning arrived with the kind of cold that made your lungs hurt just breathing. Evelyn woke to voices downstairs. Noah's high-pitched excitement and Emma's quieter responses, and beneath it all, Caleb's low rumble. She dressed quickly, her fingers clumsy with cold despite the fire someone had already built in her room. When she came down, she found the kitchen transformed into controlled chaos. Noah sat at the table covered in flour, attempting to roll out dough that kept sticking to everything. Emma was at the stove, stirring something that smelled suspiciously like burned sugar. Caleb stood in the middle of it all, looking lost, holding what appeared to be a cookbook with several pages torn out. "What's happening here?" Evelyn asked. Three faces turned toward her with varying expressions of guilt and relief. "We're making Christmas," Noah announced proudly. "Papa said we could try." "I found Mama's recipe book," Emma added, her voice tight. "We thought we'd make her gingerbread, but I think I did something wrong with the molasses." Evelyn moved to the stove and peered into the pot. The molasses had indeed burned, turned bitter and acrid. She looked at Emma's face. The girl was holding herself together by sheer force of will, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "It's all right," Evelyn said gently. "We can start over. There's more molasses in the pantry, isn't there?" "I used the last of it," Emma's voice cracked. "Mama always kept extra, but I forgot to tell Papa to buy more, and now I've ruined it, and we can't make her recipe, and it's my fault." "Emma, breathe." Caleb set down the cookbook and moved toward his daughter, but she stepped back. "Don't. Just don't. I'm trying to do this right, and I can't even manage something as simple as not burning molasses. How am I supposed to take care of this family when I can't even make gingerbread?" The words hung in the air like an accusation. Noah stopped playing with his dough, his small face worried. Caleb looked stricken. "You're not supposed to take care of this family," he said. "That's my job." "Then why am I the one doing it?" Emma's composure shattered completely. "Why am I the one making sure Noah eats and the house is clean and we remember Mama's traditions? You're here, but you're not here, Papa. You go through the motions, but you're not present. So yes, someone has to take care of things, and it's been me for 3 years, and I'm so tired of it, I could scream." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Noah had gone still, his eyes wide. Caleb opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Emma, Forget it." She untied her apron with shaking hands and threw it on the counter. "I'm going to the barn. It's freezing outside." "I don't care." She grabbed her coat and was out the door before anyone could stop her. They heard her boots on the porch steps, then nothing but the wind. Caleb stood frozen, his face pale. Noah's bottom lip trembled. "Is Emma mad at us?" the boy whispered. "She's just upset, son." Caleb's voice was hollow. "She didn't mean it." "Yes, she did," Evelyn said quietly. Both of them looked at her. "She meant every word. And she's right." Caleb flinched like she'd slapped him. "You don't understand." "I understand that you have a 12-year-old daughter who's been playing mother for 3 years because you've been too buried in grief to see what it's doing to her. I understand that she's breaking under the weight of responsibilities that shouldn't be hers. And I understand that unless something changes, you're going to lose her in a different way than you lost your wife. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. Your wife dying wasn't fair. But you still have 2 children who need you to be their father, not a ghost haunting your own house." Noah started crying, quiet, hiccuping sobs that shook his small frame. Caleb scooped him up automatically, but his eyes stayed on Evelyn, angry and hurt, and something else, something that looked almost like relief at finally being called out. "What do you want from me?" he asked roughly. "I'm doing the best I can. I want you to do better. For them. For yourself. For the memory of the woman whose recipe book you're holding, but whose wishes you're ignoring. You have no right. You asked me here. You begged me to stay longer. You wanted me to show you how to do this differently. Well, this is how. You stop hiding behind grief and you show up for your children even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts." Noah was crying harder now, his face buried in Caleb's shoulder. The man looked torn between rage and despair, standing in the middle of his kitchen with his son in his arms and the ruins of a Christmas morning scattered around them. "I don't know how," he said finally, and the admission seemed to cost him everything. "Then learn." Evelyn gentled her voice slightly. "But start by going after your daughter. She's in the barn in freezing weather because she'd rather be cold than face the fact that she's failing at an impossible task. Go tell her she doesn't have to be perfect. Tell her she's allowed to be a child. Tell her you see her. Caleb stood there for another long moment, then carefully set Noah down. Stay with Miss Mercer, he told the boy, then headed for the door. Papa? Noah called after him. Yeah, son? Tell Emma I'm sorry I made a mess of the dough. Caleb's expression cracked. I will. After he left, Evelyn pulled Noah into her lap and held him while he cried. The boy's small body shook with sobs that seemed too big for him to contain. Is it my fault? He asked between gasps. Did I make Emma sad? No, sweetheart. Emma's been sad for a long time. It just came out today. Because of the molasses? Because sometimes people can only hold things in for so long before they overflow, like a cup that's too full. Noah thought about this, his tears slowing. I overflow sometimes, when I get too excited or too scared. Exactly like that. Papa says I need to learn to control myself better. Evelyn's heart twisted. Your papa loves you very much, but grown-ups don't always say things the right way when they're hurting. Is Papa hurting? Yes. Because of Mama? Yes. Noah was quiet for a moment, then, I don't remember her very well anymore, just pieces. Her smell, the way she sang, her hands when she tucked me in. Is that bad? Oh, Noah, no, that's not bad. You were very little when she died. It's natural that the memories fade. Emma remembers everything. She tells me stories about Mama all the time, but sometimes I think she's making things better than they really were. Like Mama never got mad or made mistakes, just perfect all the time. The observation was startlingly astute for a 5-year-old. Evelyn smoothed his hair back from his forehead. People do that sometimes when someone dies. They remember only the good parts because it hurts less. But it's not real. No, it's not. I wish she was here. His voice was very small. Not the perfect mama from Emma's stories, just the real one. Even if she got mad sometimes or burned the bread or forgot things, I just want her back. Evelyn held him tighter, this small boy who'd lost so much and understood more than anyone gave him credit for. I know you do. They sat there in the quiet kitchen, the burned molasses cooling on the stove, the failed dough slowly deflating on the table. Through the window, Evelyn could see snow beginning to fall again, soft and relentless. Finally, Noah pulled back and looked at her with serious eyes. Are you going to leave too? What makes you think I'm leaving? Everyone does. Mama died. Mrs. Bailey only comes sometimes. Papa's here, but he's not really here, like Emma said. I thought maybe you'd stay, but now everyone's fighting and it's all broken again. Nothing's broken that can't be fixed. Promise? Evelyn knew better than to make promises she might not be able to keep. But looking at this child's hopeful face, she found herself saying, I promise I'll try. That's all anyone can do. It seemed to be enough. Noah nodded and climbed down from her lap. Can I go check on the barn cat? She had kittens last week, and Papa says I can visit them if I'm quiet. Bundle up warm and stay where your father can see you. He ran off to get his coat, leaving Evelyn alone with the wreckage of the morning. She stood and surveyed the damage with a practiced eye. The burned molasses could be tossed. The dough was overworked but might be salvageable. The kitchen needed cleaning again, all fixable problems. The family dynamics, on the other hand, were considerably more complicated. She was cleaning up when the door opened and Caleb came back in, alone. His face was red from cold and something else, tears maybe, though he'd clearly tried to hide the evidence. Where's Emma? Evelyn asked. Still in the barn. She wants to be alone for a while. He hung up his coat with careful movements. She said some things, true things, about how I've been absent, how she's been trying to fill her mother's shoes because I couldn't, how she's angry at Sarah for dying and angry at me for letting the family fall apart, and angry at herself for not being enough to fix it. What did you say? That she was right about all of it. He moved to the table and sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his years and more. I told her I've been a coward, that I've been so focused on not betraying Sarah's memory that I forgot to actually live up to what she would have wanted for our children. And I apologized for making Emma shoulder burdens that should have been mine. How did she take it? She cried. Really cried, not that controlled crying she does when she's trying to be strong. And then she said, his voice caught. She said she's been waiting 3 years for me to notice. The pain in those words was staggering. Evelyn sat down across from him. 3 years is a long time for a child to wait.
I know. I didn't know how to be what they needed. Sarah was the one who knew how to talk about feelings, how to comfort them when they were sad, how to make everything okay. I'm good at fixing fences and dealing with cattle and physical work. But this? He gestured helplessly. I'm failing at this. You're human. Humans fail. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you forgive yourself enough to try again.
He looked at her across the table, and she saw the war still happening behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted to retreat, to go back to the safe numbness of grief. And the part that was finally, tentatively, reaching for something different. I asked Emma what she needed from me, he said finally. She said she needed me to let her be 12, to stop expecting her to be the woman of the house, to let her make mistakes without the world ending. Those seem like reasonable requests.
They do. But I don't know how to do that without the house actually falling apart. She's been keeping things running. If she stops, then you figure it out. Or you accept that some things don't need to run perfectly. Or you ask for help. Evelyn leaned forward. You're not alone in this, Caleb. You've been acting like you are, but you're not. I can't ask you to. You already did. Last night, remember? You asked me to stay longer, to help you figure out how to do this differently.
That was before I realized what a mess we really are. I knew what you were the moment I walked into this house. You think I couldn't see it? The grief, the dysfunction, the family held together by a 12-year-old's determination and not much else? She shook her head. I saw it all. And I stayed anyway. Why? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them was quite ready to address. Evelyn thought about all the careful reasons she could give, her concern for the children, her professional interest in helping a struggling family, her desire to be useful during the holiday. But sitting across from this broken man in this broken house on Christmas Eve, she found she couldn't lie. Because I'm tired of being safe, she said quietly. I'm tired of going through the motions of a life that doesn't touch anything real. I'm tired of caring for other people's children while having none of my own, of decorating schoolhouses for families I'm not part of pretending I chose solitude when really I was just too afraid to reach for anything more. And when you asked me here, you offered me a chance to be part of something, even if it's messy, even if it hurts, even if it fails. Caleb stared at her, something shifting in his expression. You make it sound like we're saving you instead of the other way around. Maybe we're saving each other. The words settled between them like a vow. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Noah's voice drifted from somewhere upstairs, singing tunelessly to himself. The house creaked and breathed around them. Caleb reached across the table, his work-roughened hand palm up. An offering. An invitation. Evelyn looked at it for a long moment, knowing that taking it would change everything, that there would be no going back to safe solitude after this, that she was standing on the edge of something that could break her as surely as it could heal her. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and anchoring. They sat there in the quiet kitchen, holding on to each other like drowning people who'd finally found something to grab onto. I don't know how to do this, Caleb said finally. Neither do I. So we figure it out together? Together. The door opened and Emma came back in, her face red from crying and cold. She stopped when she saw them holding hands across the table, her expression unreadable. Caleb didn't let go. Emma, come here. She approached slowly, warily, like she was expecting a trap. When she was close enough, Caleb pulled her into a one-armed hug, still holding Evelyn's hand with the other. I meant what I said in the barn, he told her. You get to be 12. You get to make mistakes. You get to miss your mother without having to replace her. And I'm going to try, really try, to be present, to be the father you need instead of just the ghost of who I used to be. Emma's arms came around him tentatively. You promise? I promise. It won't be perfect. I'll mess up, but I'll try. That's all I want. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Can Miss Mercer help? Because I don't think any of us know what we're doing. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. I don't know what I'm doing either, but yes, I'll help. Good. Emma straightened her shoulders, some of that practiced composure clicking back into place. Because we still need to make Christmas happen, and the molasses is burned, and the dough is ruined, and we have about 6 hours before Mrs. Bailey gets here expecting a miracle. Then we better get started. They worked together, the three of them, salvaging what they could and improvising the rest. Noah came downstairs and joined them, his earlier upset seemingly forgotten in the excitement of having a project. They couldn't make Sarah's gingerbread without molasses, so Emma dug out a different recipe, simple sugar cookies that wouldn't judge them if they weren't perfect. Evelyn taught them all how to roll the dough thin enough, how to cut shapes that wouldn't distort in the oven, how to tell when they were done by smell rather than just time. Emma proved surprisingly skilled once she stopped trying so hard. Noah made mostly lumpy shapes that were more enthusiasm than technique, but no one criticized. Caleb was terrible at all of it, but he laughed at his own failures in a way Evelyn suspected he hadn't laughed in years. Mama would have said you cut these like you shoe horses, Emma teased, looking at her father's mangled stars. Your mama said that exact thing the one time she convinced me to help with Christmas cookies, Caleb admitted. Said I had all the delicacy of a blacksmith, which was fair given that I was one at the time. Tell us about when you met her, Emma said suddenly. You never talk about the good times, just that she's gone. Caleb's hand stilled on the rolling pin. For a moment, Evelyn thought he'd retreat again, shut down the conversation like he probably had dozens of times before. But then he took a breath and started talking. I met your mother at a barn dance in town. She was 17, visiting her aunt for the summer. I was 19 and convinced I was too cool for dancing, so I was standing in the corner trying to look mysterious. Did it work? Noah asked. Not even a little bit. Your mother walked right up to me and said, You look like someone who needs to have more fun, and dragged me onto the dance floor. I stepped on her feet maybe 20 times. She didn't care, just kept laughing and teaching me the steps. Emma smiled, a real smile that softened her whole face. That sounds like Mama. She was fearless, saw what she wanted and went after it, whether it was teaching a stubborn cowboy to dance or deciding to marry, said Cowboy, even though everyone told her she could do better. You were a good husband, Emma said fiercely. I tried to be. Made plenty of mistakes, though. Worked too much. Didn't talk about feelings enough. Thought if I just provided and protected, that would be enough. Your mother had to teach me that love is more than just showing up. It's being present, paying attention, choosing the person every day. He said it looking at Evelyn, and the weight of his gaze made her breath catch. They kept working, and gradually the kitchen filled with the smell of baking cookies and the sound of stories about Sarah, good ones and hard ones, funny and sad, all mixed together. Emma told about the time her mother tried to sew her a dress and got the measurement so wrong it fit like a tent. Noah contributed fragments of memory that might or might not have been real, but that everyone treated as precious anyway. Caleb talked about their wedding, their early years on the ranch, the way Sarah had insisted on planting roses even though everyone said they wouldn't survive the winter. She was right, of course, he said. They're still out there, under all that snow. Come spring, they'll bloom like they always have. It wasn't all gentle. Emma got upset when Caleb mentioned how Sarah used to sing while she worked, because it reminded her of all the silence now. Noah asked why Mama couldn't just come back, and nobody had a good answer. Caleb's voice broke twice, and he had to step outside for a few minutes to compose himself. But they pushed through it, all of them together, making space for the grief while also making space for the good memories, the laughter, the life that was still happening despite everything they'd lost. By early afternoon, they had 36 cookies cooling on the table and a kitchen that smelled like vanilla and butter. Noah had frosting in his hair. Emma's apron was dusted with sugar. Caleb had flour on his cheek that Evelyn reached up to brush away without thinking, and he went very still at her touch. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For this. For making it okay to remember her without it destroying us. Before Evelyn could respond, Mrs. Bailey arrived, stamping snow from her boots and carrying a basket covered with a cloth. Merry Christmas Eve, she called, then stopped and looked around at the four of them covered in flour and sugar, at the cookies covering every surface, at the unprecedented sight of Caleb Dawson actually smiling. Well, this is different. We made cookies, Noah announced proudly. Mine are the lumpy ones, but they still taste good. I'm sure they do, young man. Mrs. Bailey set down her basket and started unpacking, A ham for dinner, potatoes, carrots, something wrapped in wax paper that turned out to be a pie. She worked efficiently, her sharp eyes taking in everything without comment. Finally, she turned to Evelyn. "You've been busy." "We all have." "I can see that." The older woman's expression softened. "Looks good on you all, the being busy together." Caleb cleared his throat. "Mrs. Bailey, I wanted to ask, would you consider coming here more often? Maybe 5 days a week instead of 3? I know it's asking a lot, but with the children and the house and—" He trailed off. "You asking me to help you get this place properly sorted?" "I'm asking for help, period. Been trying to do it all myself and making a hash of it. Time I admitted that." Mrs. Bailey studied him for a long moment. 5 days a week, full pay for all 5, and you actually listen when I tell you something needs doing instead of putting it off for months. Deal. Then we'll start after New Year's. Give you time to figure out what you actually need." She turned to Emma. "And you, miss, I'm putting my foot down. You're going to spend more time being a girl and less time trying to run a household. Understood?" Emma looked like she might argue, then glanced at her father and just nodded. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for Christmas Eve dinner. Mrs. Bailey took charge of the ham while Evelyn handled the vegetables, and Caleb built up the fires throughout the house. Emma and Noah were sent to make the main room presentable, which mostly meant moving furniture back to where it belonged and draping an old quilt over the sofa to hide the worst of the stains. By the time the sun started to set, the house had transformed. Not perfect. The windows still had cracks, the floors still had gaps, the whole structure still showed signs of 3 years of neglect. But it felt alive again. Warm. Occupied by people who were trying instead of just surviving. They ate dinner at the big table in the main room, crowded together with mismatched chairs and plates that didn't quite match. The food was good. Better than good. Emma had made rolls that turned out perfectly, golden and soft. The ham was glazed with honey and studded with cloves. Mrs. Bailey's pie was apple, the crust flaky and the filling sweet tart. Noah talked non-stop, his earlier upset forgotten in the excitement of Christmas Eve. Emma was quieter, but more relaxed than Evelyn had seen her. Caleb actually ate a full meal without anyone having to prompt him. Mrs. Bailey presided over it all like a benevolent dictator, making sure everyone had enough and no one could sink into sad thoughts. After dinner, they moved to the fire. Evelyn had brought down the small gifts she'd made, the doll for Emma, the whistle for Noah. She gave them awkwardly, worried they weren't enough, but both children received them like treasures. Emma held the doll carefully, running her fingers over the yellow yarn hair. "You made this?" "It's not much. It's perfect. Thank you." Noah immediately started testing the whistle, producing a shrill note that made everyone wince. Caleb gently took it and showed him how to blow softer, and soon the boy was playing a tuneless melody with great concentration. "I didn't get you anything," Caleb said to Evelyn. "Didn't think. I should have thought. You invited me into your home for Christmas. That's gift enough. Still, I want—" He stood abruptly. "Wait here." He disappeared upstairs and came back carrying a small wooden box. When he opened it, Evelyn saw it was full of buttons, dozens of them in every size and material. Shell and bone and carved wood, pewter and brass, even a few that looked like they might be silver. "Sarah collected these," he explained. "Used to say every button had a story. Where it came from, who wore it, what it fastened. She'd pick them up at markets or trade for them or cut them off old clothes before they went to rags." He held out the box. "I want you to have them." Evelyn stared at him. "Caleb, I can't. These were your wife's, and she'd want them to go to someone who'd appreciate them, who'd use them. She hated things sitting unused, gathering dust. Please." Emma was watching them with an expression Evelyn couldn't quite read. Mrs. Bailey had gone very still. Slowly, Evelyn reached out and took the box. The buttons rattled softly, each one holding some unknown history. She thought about Sarah collecting these, imagining their stories, keeping them safe. And now Caleb was passing them on, letting them go, choosing to honor his wife's memory by allowing it to move forward. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. "I'll treasure them." "I know you will." They stayed up late, all of them, watching the fire burn and telling stories and just being together. Noah fell asleep curled against Evelyn's side. Emma leaned on her father's shoulder. Mrs. Bailey knitted something in the corner, her needles clicking a steady rhythm. Around 10, Mrs. Bailey announced she needed to get home to her own family. She bundled up against the cold, accepted Caleb's thanks with a gruff nod, and paused at the door. "This was a good day," she said. "First really good day this house has seen in 3 years. Don't let it be the last." After she left, Caleb carried Noah up to bed. Emma followed, moving slowly, reluctant to let the evening end. Evelyn stayed by the fire, the button box in her lap, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. When Caleb came back down, he found her there, staring into the flames. "Long day," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Good day, though." "Yeah, it was." He was quiet for a moment. "I meant what I said to Emma, about trying, about being present, but I'm going to need help." "I know." "Will you stay? Not just through Christmas, but longer, as long as you can." Evelyn turned to look at him. In the firelight, his face was half shadow, half gold. She could see the exhaustion there, the grief that would probably never fully leave, but she could also see something else. Hope, tentative and fragile, but real. "What are you asking, Caleb?" "I'm asking if you'll help me put this family back together. Help me learn how to be the father my children need. Help me figure out how to honor Sarah's memory without being buried by it." He reached for her hand again. "I'm asking if you'll let us be your family too, because I think you need us as much as we need you." The offer hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying, and exactly what she'd been afraid to want for 7 years. "I have my teaching position," she said, even as her heart was already saying yes. "My room in town. My life there." "And you hate it. You said so yourself." "I said I was tired of it. That's different." "Is it?" She thought about her room at the boarding house, small and cold and lonely. About Christmas Eves spent pretending she'd chosen solitude. About decorating a schoolhouse for other people's children while yearning for her own. About the careful, controlled life she'd built that protected her from hurt, but also from joy. Then she thought about Noah's weight in her lap, about Emma's fierce hug, about this kitchen coming back to life, about Caleb's hand in hers and the way her heart had lifted when he asked her to stay, about the possibility of something more than survival. "I'll need to give notice," she heard herself say. "Find someone to take over my teaching position. Pack my things." "But you'll come back?" "Yes, I'll come back." The relief on his face was staggering. He stood, pulling her up with him, and for a moment they just stood there, holding hands in front of the fire, like two people who'd finally found something worth reaching for. "I can't promise it'll be easy," Caleb said. "We're all pretty damaged. And there's so much to fix, the house, the family, ourselves. It's going to be hard work." "I know. And I can't promise I won't panic again, won't pull away when things get too real. I'm probably going to mess this up a dozen times. I'll mess up too. I don't know how to be part of a family anymore. Don't know how to be a mother to children who aren't mine. Don't know how to..." She stopped, unable to finish. "How to what?" "How to let myself care this much. It's terrifying." "Yeah," he agreed. "It is." They stood there in the firelight, two broken people choosing to try anyway. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. Inside, the house breathed around them, no longer quite so haunted. Upstairs, Noah cried out in his sleep and then fell silent. Emma's floorboards creaked as she turned over in bed, the ordinary sounds of a family settling in for the night. Caleb stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup Evelyn's face. "I'm glad you came here." "So am I." He kissed her then, soft and tentative and full of possibility. It tasted like hope and fear in equal measure, like taking a risk after years of playing it safe, like choosing life even when it hurt. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was crying. Caleb wiped her tears with his thumb, his own eyes bright. "Tomorrow's Christmas," he said. "First one in 3 years that might actually feel like it means something. Because of the children, because of all of us, because we're trying instead of just surviving." They stood there a while longer, holding each other in the firelight, before finally stepping apart. Evelyn went upstairs to her room, the button box clutched against her chest. Through the walls, she could hear the house breathing, could feel it settling around her like an embrace. She lay in bed and thought about everything that had changed in 2 short days. About the decision she'd just made to give up her carefully controlled life for something messier and scarier and infinitely more real. About Caleb's kiss and his children's trust and the terrifying possibility that she might actually get to have the family she'd stopped letting herself want. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow they would try to celebrate. Tomorrow she would start figuring out how to be part of this broken, healing family. But tonight, she let herself feel it. The fear and the hope and the overwhelming sense that she'd finally stepped off the edge of loneliness into something that might actually be worth the fall. Evelyn woke on Christmas morning to the sound of Noah screaming. She was out of bed and running before she was fully conscious, her heart hammering. The screaming was coming from downstairs, not hurt, she realized as she flew down the steps, but excited, joyful. The kind of screaming only a 5-year-old on Christmas morning could produce. She found him in the main room, jumping up and down in his nightshirt, pointing at something by the fireplace. Emma stood in the doorway, in her nightgown, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Caleb was nowhere to be seen. "What's all this noise about?" Evelyn asked, trying to catch her breath. "Presents!" Noah shrieked. "There are presents? And I didn't even know we were getting presents? And look, there's one with my name!" Evelyn moved closer and saw what had caused the commotion. Someone had arranged gifts beneath the mantel, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Nothing fancy, but clearly meant for the children. A larger bundle sat slightly apart, and Evelyn's name was written on it in Caleb's rough handwriting. The back door opened and Caleb came in, stamping snow from his boots. He took in the scene. Noah's excitement, Emma's surprise, Evelyn standing there in her nightgown with her hair loose, and something shifted in his expression. "Merry Christmas," he said. "You did this?" Emma asked, moving toward the packages with careful steps, like they might disappear if she moved too fast. "Couldn't let the day pass without something for you to open. I know they're not much—" "When did you even have time?" Evelyn interrupted. "You were with us all day yesterday. Last night, after everyone went to bed, rode into town and back. Nearly froze doing it, but—" He shrugged. "Seemed worth it." Emma picked up the package with her name on it, turning it over in her hands. Her eyes were bright with tears. "You haven't gotten us Christmas gifts since Mama died." "I know, that was wrong of me. Just because we lost her doesn't mean we have to lose everything else, too." Noah was already tearing into his package, paper flying everywhere. Inside was a small wooden horse, beautifully carved with delicate features and a flowing mane. The boy's mouth fell open. "Papa, did you make this?" "Worked on it when I had time over the past few months. Wasn't sure I'd finish, but I managed." "It's the best thing ever!" Noah clutched the horse to his chest. "I'm naming him Thunder, and he's going to be the fastest horse in the whole territory." Emma opened hers more carefully, smoothing out the paper as she went. Inside was a book, a real book with a leather cover and gilt edges. She opened it reverently. "Little Women," she read, then looked up at her father with wonder. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it once. Said Mama used to read it to you before bed, and you wished you could finish it yourself. Found it at the Mercantile." He cleared his throat. "Thought maybe Miss Mercer could read it with you. If she's willing." "I'd be honored," Evelyn said quietly. Emma threw her arms around her father's waist, the book pressed between them. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you so much." Caleb held her tight, his eyes closed. When he opened them, they were wet. "Open yours," Noah demanded, bouncing over to Evelyn. "I want to see what Papa got you." "Noah, it's not polite to—" Emma started. "It's all right," Evelyn said. She picked up the package, surprised by its weight. Inside, wrapped carefully in cloth, was a set of wooden knitting needles and several skeins of yarn in rich colors: deep blue, forest green, warm burgundy. "Mrs. Bailey mentioned you'd been admiring some yarn at her house," Caleb explained. "Said you used to knit but gave it up when you moved west because you didn't have anyone to knit for. Thought maybe now you might." The thoughtfulness of it stole her breath. Not just the gift itself, but what it represented. Him paying attention, him imagining her here long term, him wanting her to have a reason to create things for this family. "It's perfect," she managed. "Thank you." They stood there in the early morning light, the four of them surrounded by torn paper and new treasures, and Evelyn felt something shift in her chest. This was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not polished, but real. full of people who were trying their best even when their best was imperfect. Noah insisted they have breakfast immediately so they could get to the important business of playing with his new horse. Emma wanted to start reading her book right away. Caleb looked exhausted. Evelyn suspected he'd gotten maybe 2 hours of sleep after his late-night ride to town. "Everyone get dressed first," Evelyn said, taking charge. "Then breakfast. Then we'll figure out the rest of the day." "But," Noah started. "No arguments. Go on, both of you." Surprisingly, they obeyed. When they'd thundered upstairs, Evelyn turned to Caleb. "You didn't have to do that. Ride all the way to town in the middle of the night." "Yes, I did. They're my children. It's Christmas. They deserved something good." "You look terrible." "Thanks. You look—" He stopped, his gaze traveling over her loose hair, her nightgown, the soft vulnerability of her without all her careful teacher's composure in place. "You look beautiful." The word hung between them, simple and devastating. Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I should get dressed." "Evelyn, wait." He caught her hand. "Last night, what I said, I need to know you meant it, that you're really going to come back after you settle things in town." "I meant it." "Because if you're having second thoughts—" "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I'm absolutely terrified. I don't know how to be what you need, what they need. I don't know if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life or the bravest choice I've ever made. But yes, I meant it. I'm coming back." Relief flooded his face. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "We'll figure it out together." "Together," she echoed. They stayed like that for a moment before the sound of feet on the stairs made them step apart. Emma appeared, dressed and with her hair braided, already carrying her new book. "Can we start reading at breakfast?" she asked hopefully. "After breakfast," Evelyn compromised. "I promise." The morning passed in a blur of activity. They made breakfast together. Noah helped crack eggs. Emma sliced bread. Caleb managed to only burn the bacon slightly. They ate at the big table, Thunder the wooden horse occupying a place of honor beside Noah's plate. After breakfast, Evelyn kept her promise and began reading Little Women aloud while Emma followed along in the book. Noah listened for a while before getting bored and taking Thunder on elaborate adventures across the furniture. Caleb sat in his chair, ostensibly going through some ranch paperwork, but Evelyn caught him watching them more than once with an expression she couldn't quite name. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at the door. Caleb answered it to find Mrs. Bailey, bundled against the cold and carrying yet another basket. "Merry Christmas," she said briskly, stomping inside. "Brought dessert and figured I'd stay for dinner, if you'll have me. My daughter's family isn't coming until tomorrow, and I thought—" She stopped, taking in the scene. Evelyn reading to the children, Noah's new horse, Emma's book, the lingering evidence of breakfast. "Well, looks like you're managing." "We're trying," Caleb said. "Good. Keep trying." She moved to the kitchen and started unpacking. "Now then, who's going to help me with dinner? We're having a proper feast whether we know what we're doing or not." The next few hours were organized chaos. Mrs. Bailey directed operations like a general, assigning tasks and correcting mistakes with equal efficiency. Emma worked beside her, learning techniques she'd been struggling with for years. Noah was given the job of setting the table, which he took very seriously. Caleb carved the ham and tried not to get in the way. Evelyn found herself making bread again, this time with Emma watching carefully and taking mental notes. The girl had relaxed considerably since yesterday's breakdown, but there was still a fragility to her, like she was afraid to trust that things might actually be getting better. "You're doing it differently than Mama did," Emma observed, watching Evelyn knead. "Everyone has their own technique, doesn't make one right and one wrong." "Mama's was right." Evelyn paused, choosing her words carefully. "Your mama's bread was perfect for her. She'd been making it for years, had her method down. But I'm not your mama, Emma. I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to make good bread in my own way. What if I can't remember her way? What if I forget how she did things? Then you ask your father, or Mrs. Bailey, who probably knew your mother well. Or you develop your own way, which is also fine. Your mother wouldn't want you to be frozen in place trying to replicate her exactly. She'd want you to grow and learn and become yourself." Emma was quiet for a moment, her hands still in the dough she was working. "How do you know what she'd want? You never met her." "You're right, I didn't. But I know what any mother who loved her children would want.
And I know that holding on to grief so tight you can't move forward isn't honoring someone's memory. It's just another kind of dying. Is that what Papa's been doing? Dying? Maybe, a little bit, but he's trying to live again now. You all are. Emma looked toward the main room where Caleb and Noah were attempting to fix a broken chair leg with mixed success. Because you came here? No. Because you finally told the truth about how hard things have been. Because your father finally admitted he needed help. I'm just someone who showed up at the right time. You're more than that. Emma's voice was fierce. You're the first person who's treated us like we might actually be okay someday. Everyone else just looks at us with pity or avoids us because they don't know what to say. But you act like we're a real family that's just going through a hard time instead of some broken tragedy. The observation was so astute it made Evelyn's throat tight. You're a real family going through a hard time, and you want to be part of it, even knowing how messed up we all are? Especially knowing that perfect families are boring anyway. That surprised a laugh out of Emma, genuine and bright. Mrs. Bailey looked over from where she was basting the ham and smiled. They finished preparing dinner around 2 in the afternoon. The table was loaded with food, ham and potatoes, roasted carrots, the bread Emma and Evelyn had made, Mrs. Bailey's pie from yesterday, plus a cranberry tart she'd brought today. It was too much for 5 people, absurdly excessive, but nobody suggested scaling back. They sat down together, crowded around the table that had seen too many silent meals over the past 3 years. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Noah raised his cup of milk. We should make a toast, like in the fancy stories. You're 5, Emma said. You don't know about toasts. Do so. You raise your glass and say something nice, and everyone drinks. All right then, Caleb said, raising his own cup. What should we toast to? To Mama, Noah said immediately. Because she's not here, but we love her anyway. The words hit like stones thrown into still water. Emma's breath caught. Caleb's hand tightened on his cup. Even Mrs. Bailey looked affected. To Mama, Emma echoed quietly, raising her cup. To Sarah, Mrs. Bailey added. Who'd be proud of what you're all doing here? Caleb looked at Evelyn. She raised her cup and said, To Sarah, who loved her family enough to want them to be happy even after she was gone. They drank. Noah immediately started eating, oblivious to the emotion his toast had stirred. Emma wiped her eyes discreetly. Caleb stared at his plate for a long moment before finally picking up his fork. The meal was good, more than good. The ham was perfectly cooked, the vegetables seasoned well, the bread crusty and warm. They ate and talked and laughed, and gradually the shadow of Sarah's absence became less heavy. Not gone. It would never be gone, but bearable. After dinner, Noah fell asleep on the sofa, clutching thunder. Emma curled up with her book, reading ahead, while Evelyn and Mrs. Bailey cleaned up. Caleb went outside to check on the animals, a task that couldn't be avoided even on Christmas. You're planning to stay, aren't you? Mrs. Bailey said quietly as they washed dishes. How did you know? The way he looks at you, the way you look at him, the way those children have latched onto you like you're the answer to something they didn't know how to ask for. The older woman's hand stilled in the dishwater. Just don't break their hearts. They've had enough breaking. I'm not planning to. Plans change. Feelings change. This all might seem romantic now, but the reality of living out here, taking on 2 grieving children and a man who's still half in love with a ghost, that's hard work. Harder than teaching school in town. I know. Do you? Really? Mrs. Bailey turned to face her. You'll be giving up your independence, your career, your own space. You'll be dealing with nightmares and grief and 2 children who might resent you for not being their mother, even while they desperately need you to fill that role. You'll be partnering with a man who might pull away every time things get too real because he feels guilty for moving forward. Are you really prepared for that? Evelyn thought about her room in town, her teaching position, her carefully controlled life that asked nothing of her except competence and distance. No, she admitted, I'm not prepared, but I'm willing to try anyway. Mrs. Bailey studied her for a long moment, then nodded. That might be enough. Sarah wasn't prepared either, you know. Girl from town marrying a rancher and moving out to the middle of nowhere. Everyone said it wouldn't last, but she loved him enough to make it work, loved those children enough to make this house a home. And when she was dying, she made me promise I'd look after them. All of them. Did she know?
That Caleb would need someone else eventually? She hoped, said she couldn't bear the thought of him being alone forever, of the children growing up without a mother's love. Asked me to encourage him when the time came. Mrs. Bailey's eyes were wet. So I'm telling you now, you're what she would have wanted for them. Someone kind and strong and willing to step into an impossible situation. But that doesn't make it easier. Nothing worth doing is easy. Spoken like someone who's never tried to parent grieving children, but there was warmth in Mrs. Bailey's voice. You'll do, I think. You'll do just fine. They finished the dishes in companionable silence. When Caleb came back in, red-cheeked from the cold, he found his household peaceful. Noah asleep, Emma reading, Mrs. Bailey knitting, Evelyn staring into the fire with a thoughtful expression. Everything all right? He asked, hanging up his coat. Fine, Evelyn said, just thinking. About? About how different today is from every Christmas I've spent in the past 7 years. Better or worse? She looked at him standing there in his work clothes, snow melting in his hair, his face showing every year of hard living and loss. Then she looked at his children, at this house that was slowly coming back to life, at the future spreading out uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. Better, she said. Definitely better. The afternoon faded into evening. Mrs. Bailey left around 4, insisting she needed to get home before dark. Emma helped her pack up the empty dishes, chattering about her book. At the door, the older woman pulled Evelyn aside. You're going back to town tomorrow? I need to give notice. Pack my things. It'll take a few days at least. Don't take too long. They need you. And I think you need them too. She patted Evelyn's arm. Be brave, girl. It's worth it. After she left, the house felt quieter. Noah woke from his nap cranky and out of sorts, complaining that his stomach hurt from too much food. Emma tried to keep reading, but her eyes kept drooping. Caleb built up the fire and settled into his chair with a tiredness that went bone deep. Evelyn made tea and brought it to him. He took it with a grateful nod. Long day, he said. Good day, though. Yeah. He sipped the tea, wincing at the heat. Evelyn, about tomorrow. When you go back to town. How long do you think? A week. Maybe 2 if there are complications with finding a replacement teacher. I'll need to give proper notice, make sure the students are taken care of. And then you'll come back? Then I'll come back. He reached for her hand, pulling her down to sit on the arm of his chair. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream, that you were never here, that Christmas was just as bleak as the last 3, that nothing changed. It's real. I'm real. I know. It's just hard to believe that something good could actually happen, that I could actually have a second chance at... He stopped, struggling with words. At not being alone. Emma's voice cut across the room. Papa? They both turned. The girl was standing in the doorway, her book clutched to her chest, her expression unreadable. Yes, sweetheart? Are you and Miss Mercer... Are you... She swallowed. Is she going to be our new mother? The question hung in the air like something breakable. Caleb's hand tightened on Evelyn's. She could feel his panic, his uncertainty about how to answer. That's not... He started. We haven't... Emma, it's complicated. It's not complicated. Emma's voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce. Either she's staying and becoming part of this family or she's not. Either you're finally letting yourself move forward or you're going to send her away like you send everyone away. Which is it? Emma, that's not fair, Evelyn said gently. Why not? Why isn't it fair to ask for the truth? I've spent 3 years watching Papa pretend he's fine while dying inside, watching him push away anyone who tried to help. And now you're here. And he's different. We're all different. And I need to know if it's real or if it's just going to be another thing we lose. The pain in her voice was devastating. Caleb stood, moving toward his daughter, but she backed away. I can't do it again, Emma said, tears streaming down her face now. I can't let myself hope and then have it ripped away. I can't watch you go back to being a ghost. I can't keep being the only one holding this family together. So either you tell me right now that you're going to fight for this, for her, for us, for actually living again, or I'm going to stop trying too. Emma, I mean it, Papa. I'm 12 years old and I'm tired. I'm so tired. And if you can't be brave enough to choose being happy over being stuck in grief, then I don't know what to do anymore. Caleb stood frozen. his daughter's ultimatum ringing through the room. Evelyn could see the war happening in his face, fear and guilt and longing all tangled together. This was it. The moment where he either stepped forward or retreated, where he chose life or chose safety. The silence stretched out, agonizing. Emma's tears fell freely now, her whole body shaking with the force of her emotion. Noah appeared in the doorway, woken by the commotion, confusion written all over his small face. Finally, Caleb moved, not toward Emma, but toward the mantel where Sarah's portrait sat. He picked it up, holding it gently, looking at his wife's frozen smile. "I loved you," he said quietly. "I still love you. And I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. Sorry I brought you out here where decent medical care was too far away. Sorry I worked too much and didn't see the signs until it was too late. Sorry I've spent 3 years making your children miserable because I couldn't figure out how to let you go." Emma's breath hitched. Evelyn's heart hammered. "But you're gone," Caleb continued, his voice breaking. "You're gone and I'm still here and our children are still here and we need to find a way to keep living. And I think," he looked at Evelyn, then back at the portrait, "I think you'd be angry at me for how long it took, for how much I've let everyone suffer because I was too afraid to move forward." He set the portrait down carefully, then turned to Emma. "You're right," he said, "about all of it. I've been a coward. I've let grief turn me into someone your mother wouldn't recognize, someone she wouldn't be proud of. And I'm done. I'm done being stuck. I'm done punishing everyone for something none of us could control. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to try. I'm choosing—" He looked at Evelyn. "I'm choosing her, if she'll have me. If she'll have us." Emma let out a sob and threw herself into her father's arms. Noah, sensing the emotional moment, ran over and wrapped himself around both of them. They stood there in the firelight, the three of them holding each other and crying, and finally letting some of the grief drain away. Evelyn watched from where she stood, tears running down her own face. This wasn't her moment. This was theirs. A family finally choosing to heal. But then Caleb reached out a hand to her and she took it, letting herself be pulled into the circle of their embrace. Emma's arms came around her waist. Noah grabbed her skirt. Caleb's hand was warm and solid in hers. "Is that a yes?" Emma asked, her voice muffled against her father's chest. "She's staying?" "If she wants to," Caleb said, looking at Evelyn. "If she's willing to take on this mess of a family and all the hard work that comes with it." "I want to," Evelyn said through her tears. "I want all of it." They stood there for a long time, the four of them tangled together, letting the decision settle into something real. Finally, Noah pulled back and looked up at Evelyn with serious eyes. "Does this mean you're going to be our mama now?" The question stopped everyone. Evelyn looked at Emma, at Caleb, uncertain how to answer without dishonoring Sarah's memory. "No," she said finally. "Your mama was Sarah, and she'll always be your mama. But I can be someone else, someone who loves you and takes care of you and is part of your family, if that's okay with you." Noah considered this gravely. "What do we call you then? If you're not Mama, but you're not Miss Mercer anymore either. What do you want to call me?" He thought about it. "Evie. That sounds nice. Is that okay?" "That's perfect." Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry I got so angry. I shouldn't have—" "You should have," Caleb interrupted. "You should have done it 3 years ago. Someone needed to shake me out of this, and I'm glad it was you." He looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and regret. "You've been braver than I have for so long. Let me be brave now. Let me take care of things for a while. I don't know how to stop. Then we'll figure it out together, all of us." They moved to the sofa, all four of them squeezing onto it in a tangle of limbs and warmth. The fire crackled. Outside, night had fallen fully, bringing with it fresh snow and bitter cold. But inside, the house felt different, warmer, more alive. "Tell us about when you were a girl," Noah said to Evelyn, "before you came west." So she did. She told them about growing up on a farm in Pennsylvania, about her mother's garden and her father's quiet strength. She told them about learning to read and falling in love with books and dreaming of adventure. She told them about loss and loneliness and the slow realization that running away doesn't fix anything. Emma listened intently, occasionally asking questions. Noah drifted off again, his head in Evelyn's lap. Caleb sat with his arm around her shoulders, and she could feel some of the tension finally leaving his body.
What made you decide to come west? Emma asked. I thought I was running towards something new. Turns out I was just running away from grief. Took me 7 years to figure out that didn't actually help. And now? Now I'm choosing to run toward something, toward this, toward all of you, even though it's terrifying. Why is it terrifying? Evelyn thought about how to answer honestly without being too heavy. Because when you care about people, you can lose them, and loss hurts. So sometimes it feels safer not to care at all. But that's not really living. That's just existing. That's what we've been doing, Emma said quietly. Just existing. For 3 whole years. Well, not anymore. They sat together as the evening deepened into night. Eventually, Caleb carried Noah up to bed. Emma followed, exhausted from the emotional day. Evelyn stayed by the fire, thinking about everything that had happened in the past few days. When Caleb came back down, he found her still there, staring into the flames. Long day, he said, settling beside her. Best day I've had in years. Yeah, me too. He reached for her hand. Thank you. For pushing me, for not letting me hide, for being brave when I couldn't be. You were brave today, telling Emma the truth, choosing to move forward. That took real courage. Felt more like desperation, like I'd run out of ways to avoid the truth. Sometimes that's what courage is, running out of other options and finally doing the right thing anyway. He pulled her closer and she let herself lean into him. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down. I need to tell you something, Caleb said eventually. About Sarah. About us. You don't have to be... I do. If we're going to do this, if you're really going to be part of this family, you need to know the truth. Not the perfect memory Emma's building or the tragic story everyone in town tells. The real thing. Evelyn waited. I loved her, he said. I did. But our marriage wasn't perfect. We fought about money, about me working too much, about her being lonely out here. She wanted more children. I wasn't sure we could afford them. She wanted to visit town more often. I thought it was a waste of time. We had good moments and hard moments like anyone. That's normal. I know. But after she died, I turned her into a saint in my mind. Made her perfect so I'd have an excuse to never move on. Because if she was perfect, how could anyone else ever measure up? He looked at Evelyn. That was unfair to her memory and unfair to anyone who might come after. She was human, flawed, real, and she deserves to be remembered that way. Thank you for telling me. There's more. When she was dying, she knew what was happening. We both did. And she made me promise I wouldn't do this. Wouldn't turn her into a shrine and myself into a martyr. She wanted me to find someone else eventually, to give the children a mother, to let myself be happy again. And I've been violating that promise for 3 years. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman. She was. Not perfect, but remarkable. And I think, his voice caught, I think she'd like you. I think she'd be glad it was you. Evelyn turned to face him fully. Caleb, I need you to know something. I'm not here to replace her. I couldn't even if I tried. What you had with her was yours. What we have, whatever this becomes, will be ours. Different. Its own thing. I know. And I want that. I want something that's ours. I want to stop comparing everything to what was and start building what could be. He cupped her face in his hands. I want to marry you. Make this official. Give you a real place in this family, instead of just having you live here in some undefined role. The words should have thrilled her. Instead, they made her pause. That's a big step. We've known each other for 3 days. I know. And I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm saying eventually. When you're ready, when the children are ready, when we've had time to figure out what this is. But I wanted you to know that's where I'm headed, that I'm not asking you to give up your life just to be some temporary help. I'm asking you to build a life here, with us, permanently. Evelyn's heart was racing. This was everything she'd stopped letting herself want. A family, a home, someone who loved her. But it was also terrifying in its permanence. What if I'm terrible at it, she asked. What if the children end up resenting me? What if we discover we don't actually work well together once the romance wears off? Then we deal with it, together, like any family deals with problems. He smiled slightly. I'm not offering you perfection, Evelyn. I'm offering you reality, messy and hard and sometimes painful, but real. Is that enough?
She thought about her old life. Safe, controlled, lonely. Then she thought about Noah's laugh and Emma's fierce heart and this man's tentative hope. Yes, she said. It's enough. It's more than enough. He kissed her then, deep and sure, like sealing a promise. When they pulled apart, they were both shaking. I should go to bed, Evelyn said. Tomorrow's going to be hard, saying goodbye, even temporarily. You'll come back, though. I'll come back. I promise. She stood, but he caught her hand. Evelyn, I know I haven't said it yet, but I need you to know I love you. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe when you stood in my kitchen and called me on my grief. Maybe when you held my son while he cried. Maybe the first time I saw you with my daughter and realized she was smiling again. But I love you, and I'm going to spend whatever time you'll give me proving you didn't make a mistake choosing us. The words cracked something open in her chest. I love you too, all of you. Your broken, beautiful family and this falling apart house and the terrifying future we're building together. All of it. They stood there in the dying firelight, holding hands and holding on to hope. Finally, Evelyn pulled away and headed upstairs. In her room, she looked around at her few possessions, at the life she'd have to pack up and leave behind. It should have felt sad. Instead, it felt like shedding skin that didn't fit anymore. She climbed into bed and lay in the dark, listening to the house breathe around her. Tomorrow, she'd go back to town, give notice, pack up 7 years of careful solitude, and then she'd come back here and figure out how to be part of something bigger than herself. It was terrifying. It was perfect. It was real. Through the walls, she heard Caleb moving around in his room, heard Emma turn over in her sleep, heard Noah cry out from a nightmare and then settle again. The sounds of a family. Her family now, or close enough. She closed her eyes and let herself believe it was possible. All of it. The happy ending she'd stopped letting herself want. The second chance none of them thought they deserved. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, on Christmas, in this house that was learning to live again, Evelyn Mercer let herself hope. The morning Evelyn left for town, Noah wouldn't let go of her skirt. You promised you'd come back, he said, for the 10th time, his small face pinched with worry. You promised. And I will, 2 weeks at the most. She knelt down to his level, smoothing his unruly hair. I have to take care of some things in town, but then I'm coming right back here. To you and Emma and your papa. What if you change your mind? What if you get to town and remember you like it better there? The fear in his voice broke her heart. He'd lost his mother without warning. In his mind, people who left didn't always come back. Noah, listen to me. She took his small hands in hers. I'm not leaving because I want to. I'm leaving because I have responsibilities I need to finish. But this, she gestured to the house, to him, to Emma hovering in the doorway, and Caleb loading her bag into the wagon. This is home now. You're my family, and I always come home to family. Promise? I promise. He threw his arms around her neck, squeezing tight enough to hurt. She held him and tried not to cry. Over his head, she met Caleb's eyes. He looked as wrecked as she felt. Emma came forward slowly, her new book clutched to her chest like armor. I marked the page where we stopped reading, so we can pick up right where we left off when you get back. That's perfect. And the girl's voice cracked. I wrote down some questions I have about cooking and other things. Things Mama used to know. I thought maybe when you come back We'll go through every single one, Evelyn promised. I'll teach you everything I know. Emma nodded, blinking hard against tears. Then, surprising them both, she stepped forward and hugged Evelyn fiercely. Don't stay away too long. We need you here. I know. I'll be as fast as I can. The ride into town was quiet. Caleb drove with his attention fixed on the road, his jaw tight. Evelyn sat beside him, trying to memorize everything, the way the mountains looked in morning light, the pattern of snow on the valley floor, the curl of smoke from the ranch house chimney. Her home. Already, it felt like her home. You all right? Caleb asked finally. No. Leaving feels wrong, even though I know I have to. Could just stay. Forget about giving notice or packing. Send word to Mrs. Patterson to ship your things. That's not fair to my students. They deserve better than being abandoned mid-year. I know. Doesn't mean I like it. They rode in silence for another mile. Then Caleb said, I'm scared you won't come back. I will. I know you believe that now, but once you're there, once you're back in your routine, in that life you built for yourself, what if it's easier to just stay? What if coming back here starts to feel like too much work? Evelyn turned to look at him. Is that what you think? That I'm choosing you and the children because it's convenient? That I'll bail the moment things get hard? No, I just... He struggled for words. I've lost before. I know how it feels. And the thought of losing you too, of watching the children get their hearts broken again. Caleb stopped the wagon. He pulled on the reins, bringing the horses to a halt. They sat there in the middle of the frozen road, snow-covered emptiness stretching in all directions. Evelyn took his face in her hands. Look at me. I'm not Sarah. I'm not going to die and leave you. And I'm not some flighty woman who makes promises she doesn't intend to keep. When I say I'm coming back, I mean it. This isn't some romantic whim that'll fade once reality sets in. This is me choosing a life I actually want instead of settling for one I can tolerate. But what if... There's always what ifs. What if I get sick? What if you decide I'm not what you really want? What if the children end up hating me? What if we're making a massive mistake? She leaned her forehead against his. But we can't live our lives in what ifs. At some point, you have to take the risk and trust that it'll work out, or at least that it's worth trying. I'm not good at trust anymore. I know, but you're trying. That's all I'm asking. Try to trust me. Try to believe that I mean what I say, and I'll try to get back here as fast as humanly possible. He kissed her then, desperate and clinging, like he could keep her there through sheer force of will. When they pulled apart, they were both shaking. 2 weeks, he said. 2 weeks. They continued into town. When they reached the boarding house where Evelyn rented her room, Caleb helped her down from the wagon and carried her bag to the door. I'll come back in 2 weeks to get you, he said. Whatever you can't fit, we'll make another trip for. Caleb, you don't have to. I want to. I want to be the one who brings you home. The word home settled between them, warm despite the cold. Evelyn reached up and kissed him one more time. Tell the children I love them. Tell them I'll write. I will. She watched him drive away, the wagon getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared around a bend. Then she turned and went inside to face the life she was leaving behind. Mrs. Patterson was in the kitchen when Evelyn came in. The older woman looked up from her bread making and her eyebrows rose. Well, you're back. Wasn't sure you would be. I need to talk to you about my room. Giving notice, are you? How did you know? Mrs. Patterson smiled knowingly. You've got that look. The one women get when they finally decided to reach for something. How long do I have? 2 weeks, if that works for you. Works fine. I've got someone asking about the room anyway. She dusted flour from her hands. He's a good man, that Caleb Dawson. Lost, but good. And those children need a mother. I'm not replacing their mother. Didn't say you were. Said they need a mother, present tense. Different thing entirely. Mrs. Patterson fixed her with a sharp look. You sure about this? Ranch life is hard. Being an instant parent to grieving children is harder. And loving a man who's still half in love with a ghost, that's hardest of all. Everyone keeps warning me how hard it'll be. Nobody seems to consider that I might want hard, that I might be tired of easy and safe and lonely. Fair point. Mrs. Patterson went back to her bread. Well, you'll have my blessing anyway, for what it's worth. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. Evelyn met with the school board, gave formal notice, and helped them begin the search for her replacement. She went through her classroom, organizing materials and making notes for whoever came next. She said goodbye to students who cried and asked why she was leaving. I'm going to be a mother, she told them, and realized it was true. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but true nonetheless. Packing up her room was harder than she'd expected. 7 years of life in Silver Creek reduced to 3 trunks and a few boxes, books and clothes and small treasures she'd collected. Not much to show for all that time. It made her realize how little she'd actually lived during those years, how much she'd just been going through motions. She wrote to Caleb and the children every other day. Caleb's responses were brief but warm, updating her on ranch business and small moments with the kids. Emma's letters were longer, full of questions and observations and a tentative hope that made Evelyn's chest ache. Noah couldn't write yet, so he drew pictures, elaborate scenes of horses and houses and stick figures that were labeled Evie. On the 10th day, as Evelyn was sorting through the last of her belongings, someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find a woman she vaguely recognized from church. Mrs. Henderson, maybe, or Morrison. One of the respectable town ladies who'd always treated Evelyn with polite distance. "Miss Mercer, I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all. Please, come in." The woman stepped inside, looking around the half-packed room with barely concealed curiosity. "I heard you're leaving us, going to the Dawson ranch." "That's right." "To marry Mr. Dawson?" The bluntness caught Evelyn off guard. "Eventually, yes." "And take on his children? Those poor grieving babies?" "They're not babies. Emma's 12 and Noah's 5. But yes, I'll be their stepmother." The woman's expression was hard to read. "People are talking, saying it's improper, that you barely know the man, that you're taking advantage of a widower's loneliness." Evelyn felt heat rise to her face. "I'm sorry, but I don't see how my personal life is anyone's concern but mine and Mr. Dawson's." In a small town, everything is everyone's concern, especially when it involves children. The woman paused. "I knew Sarah Dawson. We served on the church committee together. She was a good woman, a godly woman, and those children loved her desperately." "I'm aware of that." "Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you're a stranger swooping in to take her place. How can you possibly expect to fill her shoes?" The accusation landed like a blow. Evelyn took a breath, fighting to keep her composure. "I don't expect to fill her shoes. I'm not Sarah, and I'll never be Sarah. But those children need someone who can love them now, in the present, not worship a memory of what was. And Caleb deserves to have a partner instead of living alone with his grief until it kills him." "So you're doing them a favor?" "No, they're doing me one. They're giving me a family when I thought I'd spend my whole life alone. They're giving me purpose beyond just existing. They're giving me a chance to matter to someone." Evelyn's voice hardened. "And frankly, whether you or anyone else in this town approves is irrelevant. I'm going. I'm going to love those children and that man the best way I know how. And if I fail, at least I'll fail trying instead of sitting safe and alone and judging other people's choices." The woman's eyes widened. For a moment, Evelyn thought she'd gone too far. Then, surprisingly, Mrs. Henderson smiled. "Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." "I'm sorry? I didn't come here to discourage you, Miss Mercer. I came to make sure you were serious, that you understood what you were taking on and weren't just playing at being a savior." She moved toward the door. "Sarah was my friend, and before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise that if Caleb ever found someone else, I'd make sure that someone was strong enough to handle what they were getting into. You are, so you have my blessing." She left before Evelyn could respond, leaving her standing in the middle of her half-packed room, shaking. That night, Evelyn lay in bed and thought about all the warnings she'd received. Mrs. Bailey's caution about the reality of ranch life, Caleb's fear that she'd change her mind, Mrs. Patterson's reminder that nothing about this would be easy. Now Mrs. Henderson's test to make sure she was serious. Everyone seemed convinced she didn't know what she was getting into. And maybe they were right. Maybe she was being naive, thinking love would be enough to overcome grief and loss, and the massive challenge of becoming an instant parent to traumatized children. But then she thought about Emma's fierce hug, about Noah's trust when he'd asked her to promise she'd come back, about Caleb's tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, he could have a second chance at happiness. She was terrified, absolutely terrified, but she was also more certain than she'd been about anything in 7 years. This was right. This was where she belonged. The last few days passed in a rush. Evelyn said goodbye to colleagues, to students, to the few people in town she'd considered friends. She finished packing, arranged for her trunks to be shipped, kept only what she could carry in 2 bags. On the morning Caleb was due to arrive, she stood in her empty room one last time. 7 years. It felt like both forever and no time at all. She'd been safe here, comfortable, carefully controlled, and completely, desperately lonely. She heard the wagon pull up outside and her heart leapt. When she looked out the window, she saw Caleb climbing down, then reaching up to help 2 small figures down after him. The children. He'd brought the children. Evelyn flew down the stairs and out the door. Noah saw her first and came running, nearly falling twice in his excitement. She caught him and swung him around, laughing. "You came! You really came!" I told you I would. Emma approached more slowly, but her face was bright with relief. You're really coming home? I'm really coming home. Caleb stood by the wagon, watching them with an expression that made Evelyn's breath catch. When she met his eyes, she saw everything written there. Love and relief and wonder that she'd kept her promise. Told you I'd be here to bring you home, he said. So you did. They loaded her bags into the wagon. Mrs. Patterson came out to say goodbye, pressing a package of food into Evelyn's hands for the journey. Even a few of her former students appeared, drawn by word that their teacher was leaving, and clustered around to say goodbye. Will you visit us? One little girl asked tearfully. Of course, the ranch isn't that far. You can come see me too. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Henderson appeared, carrying something wrapped in cloth. She handed it to Evelyn without ceremony. From Sarah's mother. She lives back east, couldn't make the journey after Sarah died, but she sent this for whoever her son-in-law eventually married. Said Sarah would want her things to be used, not locked away. Evelyn unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a beautiful shawl, hand-knitted in a delicate pattern, soft as a cloud. I can't accept this. You can and you will. Sarah's mother was specific. She said Sarah would want her husband to be happy again, her children to have a mother again, and whoever that woman was should have something of Sarah's to remember that she has a predecessor's blessing. Mrs. Henderson's eyes were damp. We all loved Sarah, but we love those children more, and they need you. So take the shawl and wear it well. Evelyn clutched the shawl to her chest, too moved to speak. She just nodded. The ride back to the ranch was nothing like the tense journey into town 2 weeks earlier. Noah chattered nonstop, telling Evelyn everything that had happened while she was gone. The calf that was born, the fence they'd fixed, the cookies Emma had made all by herself that had turned out perfectly. Emma sat close, her hand occasionally reaching out to touch Evelyn's sleeve, as if checking to make sure she was real. Caleb drove with one hand on the reins and the other holding Evelyn's, his thumb making small circles on her palm. How was it? He asked quietly during a lull in Noah's monologue. Leaving town? Harder than I expected, easier than I feared, mostly just final, like closing a chapter I've been stuck on for too long. Any regrets? Not a single one. When the ranch came into view, Evelyn felt something settle in her chest. Home. This was home now. The house looked different than it had 2 weeks ago. Someone had fixed the broken porch railing, cleared the snow from the walkway, even hung a wreath on the door. We've been getting things ready, Emma said, following Evelyn's gaze. Mrs. Bailey said we needed to make it proper for when you came back. Papa fixed what he could. I cleaned everything. Even Noah helped. I swept the floor, Noah announced proudly. 3 whole times. Inside, the changes were even more apparent. The house was clean, truly clean, not just surface tidy. Curtains had been mended and rehung. Furniture was properly arranged. The kitchen gleamed. And in Evelyn's room upstairs, she found fresh linens on the bed, wildflowers in a jar by the window despite the winter cold, and a note in Emma's careful handwriting. Welcome home. Evelyn sat on the bed and cried. She heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to find Caleb in the doorway. You all right? I didn't think it would feel this way, like I actually belong somewhere. You do belong here. We've just been waiting for you to realize it. He sat beside her, and she leaned into him, letting herself be held. Through the floor, they could hear Noah playing with thunder and Emma starting dinner preparations. The sounds of a family. Their family. I want to marry you, Caleb said suddenly. Not eventually. Soon, if you're willing. How soon? As soon as it can be arranged. I don't want there to be any question that you belong here, that you're part of this family officially, and I'm tired of waiting for good things. Evelyn pulled back to look at him. The children, do they know you're planning to propose? Emma knows. She helped me pick out the ring. Noah knows something's happening, but he's 5, so his understanding is limited. Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band with a small stone. It's not much. Sarah's ring is packed away for Emma someday. This one I had made new. Wanted it to be ours, not a hand-me-down. It's perfect. So is that a yes? That's a yes? He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made specifically for her hand. Maybe it had been. They sat there for a long moment, just breathing together, letting the enormity of the decision settle. Then Emma's voice called up the stairs. "Dinner's ready, and I made it without burning anything." They went downstairs to find the table set, food steaming in serving dishes, Noah already in his seat with Thunder beside his plate. Emma stood by the stove looking proud and nervous in equal measure. "Everything looks wonderful," Evelyn said. "I used the recipes you taught me, and I didn't panic when something went wrong. I just fixed it and kept going." "That's exactly right." They ate together, all four of them, and it felt different than it had 2 weeks ago. More settled, more real, like they'd moved from trying to be a family to actually being one. After dinner, when the children were in bed and Evelyn and Caleb sat by the fire, she asked him something she'd been wondering. "Are you afraid of getting married again?" "Terrified, but not for the reasons you'd think." "What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid I'll mess it up, that I'll fall back into old patterns, that I'll fail you the way I feel like I failed Sarah." He stared into the flames. "And I'm afraid of being happy," which sounds stupid, but it's true. Happiness feels dangerous, like something that'll be taken away the moment I trust it. "I understand that." "Do you?" "I'm afraid too. I'm afraid the children will grow to resent me. I'm afraid I'll never live up to Sarah's memory. I'm afraid I'll wake up one day and realize I'm in over my head and don't know how to swim." She took his hand. "But I'm more afraid of living the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I'd been brave enough to try." "Then we'll be afraid together." Together. They sat in silence, watching the fire burn. Finally, Caleb spoke again. "I went to Sarah's grave last week. Hadn't been since the funeral. Couldn't face it. But I went and I told her about you. About how I was planning to marry again. To give the children a mother. To try to move forward." His voice was rough. "And I asked her permission, which is probably ridiculous since she's dead and can't answer. But I needed to say it out loud." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd always love her. That she'd always be the children's mother. The woman who made me believe in family in the first place. But that I had to let her go. Had to stop living in the past. Had to choose life, even though it meant accepting she wasn't part of that life anymore." He looked at Evelyn. "I told her about you, about how you came here and saw all our broken pieces and didn't run. About how you loved my children without trying to erase their mother's memory. About how you made me want to try again." What do you think she would have said? Probably that it took me long enough. She always hated when I overthought things. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She would have liked you, though. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't put up with my nonsense. I'll do my best to continue not putting up with it." They stayed up late, making plans. They'd marry in the spring, once the weather cleared. Small ceremony, just family and a few close friends. Emma would help with the preparations. Noah would probably do something disruptive but adorable. Mrs. Bailey would make sure everything went smoothly, whether they wanted her to or not. And then Evelyn would officially be Evelyn Dawson, wife, mother, part of something bigger than herself. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next few months were a blur of adjustment. Evelyn learned the rhythms of ranch life, early mornings and hard work, isolation broken by occasional trips to town, the constant battle against weather and equipment failures, and 100 small crises. She learned to cook for 4, to mend clothes worn thin by hard use, to manage a household that fought against order at every turn. She learned Emma's moods, the signs that the girl was struggling even when she claimed to be fine. She learned that Noah's boundless energy masked a deep fear of being left alone. She learned Caleb's tells, the way he shut down when he was overwhelmed, the subjects that were still too painful to discuss, the moments when he needed space versus the moments when he needed to be pulled out of his own head. And they learned her. Emma discovered that Evelyn's patience had limits, and that when pushed too far, she could be just as fierce as any mother protecting her children. Noah learned that Evelyn kept her promises, every single one, even when it was inconvenient. Caleb learned that Evelyn wouldn't let him hide, wouldn't accept half-truths or avoidance, but also wouldn't push harder than he could handle. It wasn't smooth. Emma had a breakdown in February when she found her mother's old sewing kit and realized she'd forgotten the sound of Sarah's voice. Noah wet the bed for a week straight after a nightmare about Evelyn leaving. Caleb pulled away in March, convinced he was betraying Sarah's memory by being happy, and Evelyn had to fight to pull him back. But they kept trying. That was the thing. They kept showing up for each other even when it was hard, kept choosing to stay even when leaving felt easier, kept building this imperfect, messy, beautiful family, one day at a time. The wedding took place in late April, when the first flowers were beginning to push through the thawing ground. They held it at the ranch, with Mrs. Bailey presiding unofficially and a circuit preacher saying the official words. Emma wore a new dress made from fabric Evelyn had taught her to sew. Noah served as ring bearer and only dropped the rings once. Caleb wore his best shirt and looked like he might cry through the entire ceremony. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, there was a long silence. Then Emma stood up. "I object," she said clearly. Everyone froze. Caleb's face went pale. Evelyn's heart stopped. Emma looked around at the assembled guests. "I object to anyone thinking this is replacing my mama. Miss Mercer, Evelyn, isn't here to erase my mother or make us forget her. She's here because she loves us and we love her and because Mama would want us to be happy. So nobody better say anything bad about either of them or they'll answer to me." She sat back down, her face flushed but determined. There was a moment of stunned silence, then someone started clapping. Mrs. Bailey, Evelyn realized. Then others joined in until the whole gathering was applauding. The preacher cleared his throat and smiled. "I don't believe that's the kind of objection the ceremony typically accounts for, but it's well said nonetheless. Shall we continue?" They said their vows. Simple ones, promising to love and honor and try their best even when they failed. Caleb's hand shook when he slipped the ring on Evelyn's finger. She was crying by the time she slipped his on his. "You may kiss your bride." Caleb pulled her close and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. When they pulled apart, Noah was making exaggerated gagging noises, and Emma was trying not to smile. The celebration afterward was small but genuine. Food and music and people who'd known the Dawsons for years watching with cautious hope as this new family took shape. Evelyn danced with Caleb, then with Noah standing on her feet, then with Emma, who'd been reluctant but finally agreed. As the sun set and people began to head home, Mrs. Bailey pulled Evelyn aside. "You did good, girl. Real good. I haven't done anything yet, just said some vows. You gave that man a reason to live again, gave those children a mother who sees them for who they are, instead of who they're supposed to be. Gave this house back its heart." Mrs. Bailey's eyes were damp. "Sarah would be proud. I hope you know that." "I hope so too." That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Evelyn stood in the main room and looked at Sarah's portrait still sitting on the mantel. Caleb came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "We should move it," he said. "Put it in the children's room or somewhere else. It feels strange having it here now that you're my wife." "No, leave it." Evelyn leaned back into him. "She's part of this family's story. She always will be. We don't have to erase her to make room for me. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm practical. There's a difference." He turned her to face him. "Thank you for choosing us, for staying even when it was hard, for becoming part of this impossible family and making it work. We're all choosing each other. That's what family is." They stood there at their house, truly theirs now, and listened to it breathe around them. So much had changed in 4 months. The house was warmer, better maintained, full of life again. The children were healing, learning to carry their grief without being crushed by it. Caleb was present in a way he hadn't been in years. And Evelyn finally had what she'd stopped letting herself want. A family, a home, a purpose beyond just getting through each day. It wasn't perfect. Noah still had nightmares. Emma still struggled with feeling like she had to be strong all the time. Caleb still had moments when the guilt threatened to pull him under. And Evelyn still sometimes felt like an imposter playing at being a mother. But they were trying. All of them, together, building something new from the ruins of what was lost. That was the thing about grief, Evelyn had learned. It didn't go away. It didn't magically heal. You just learned to carry it differently. Learned to make room for it alongside joy and hope and love. Learned that moving forward wasn't betrayal. It was survival. It was choosing life even when life had hurt you. She thought about the lonely teacher she'd been 4 months ago, decorating an empty schoolhouse and pretending she'd chosen solitude. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone she'd been before she learned what it meant to truly belong somewhere. "What are you thinking?" Caleb asked. "That I'm glad Noah broke that milk pitcher." He laughed, surprised. "What?" "That first morning I was here. When I came down and found him standing in broken glass, crying because he thought he'd ruined everything. If that hadn't happened, I might not have stayed. Might have gotten scared and run back to town. But seeing him like that, seeing all of you trying so hard and failing, it made me realize I wanted this. Wanted to be part of the mess instead of just observing from the outside. So you're saying we should thank our son for being clumsy? I'm saying sometimes broken things lead to better things. Sometimes you have to fall apart before you can build something stronger. Caleb pulled her closer. I love you. Have I told you that today? Several times, but I don't mind hearing it again. I love you, and I'm going to keep loving you even when we fight and fail and mess everything up, which we will. I know, and I'll keep loving you too, all of you. Upstairs, they heard Noah cry out from a nightmare. Without discussion, they both headed for the stairs. This was parenthood now. Shared responsibility, shared worry, shared love. They went into Noah's room together and found him sitting up in bed, thunder clutched to his chest, tears streaming down his face. Hey, buddy, Caleb said softly. What's wrong? Had a bad dream. Everyone left and I was alone. Evelyn sat on the edge of his bed. We're right here. We're not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. Your papa and I are married now. That means we're a family forever. You're stuck with me. Good. Noah wiped his eyes. Can I sleep in your room tonight? Evelyn looked at Caleb, who shrugged. Sure. Why not? It's our wedding night. What's more romantic than a 5-year-old between us? They made a nest of blankets on the floor of their room, and Noah curled up there, asleep again within minutes. Evelyn and Caleb lay in their bed, hands linked across the space between them, listening to their son breathe. This is our life now, Caleb said. I wouldn't change it for anything. Not even for a wedding night without interruptions? Not even for that. Through the walls, they heard Emma moving around in her room, probably reading by candlelight when she was supposed to be sleeping. They'd talk to her about it in the morning, or maybe they'd let it go, pick their battles, figure out which rules mattered and which ones didn't. Because that was parenthood too. Making it up as you went along, doing your best, accepting that your best wouldn't always be good enough, but trying anyway. Evelyn thought about all the warnings she'd received, about how hard this would be, how she couldn't possibly understand what she was getting into, how naive she was to think love would be enough. They'd been right about some of it. Love wasn't enough on its own. It took work and commitment and showing up even when you didn't know what you were doing. It took accepting imperfection in yourself and others. It took being brave enough to build something new instead of clinging to what was lost. But the thing everyone had missed was that hard didn't mean wrong, that struggle didn't mean failure, that choosing the difficult path because it led somewhere worth going was its own kind of wisdom. She'd given up her safe, solitary life for this chaotic, messy, beautiful family, and she'd do it again in a heartbeat, because this, lying in the dark with her husband beside her and her children sleeping near and a whole uncertain future stretching out ahead, this was what living actually felt like. Not just existing, not just surviving, living. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. Noah stirred in his sleep. The house creaked and settled around them like it had done for years, but now it sounded different. Not like a structure holding ghosts, but like a home holding a family. Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The exhaustion and the joy, the fear and the hope. The overwhelming sense of finally being exactly where she belonged. In the morning, they'd wake up and start the whole thing over. Figure out breakfast and chores and all the small struggles that made up a life. Emma would help with the cooking while trying not to take over completely. Noah would make a mess of something while trying to help. Caleb would get overwhelmed and Evelyn would pull him back. They'd all fail at something, apologize, try again. But right now, in the quiet darkness of their first night as a married family, everything was perfect in its imperfection. Evelyn? Caleb whispered. Yeah? Thank you for saying yes to all of this. To us. Thank you for asking. They lay there in the darkness, holding hands across the space between them, while their children slept and the house breathed and the future waited. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be real. And that was worth more than any carefully controlled safety had ever been. The lantern glowing in the ranch window, the one Emma had insisted on lighting every night, no longer symbolized loneliness or loss or waiting for something that would never come. Now it meant belonging, family, home, and that made all the difference.